The Corey Brothers Mouthpieces Podcast.
Yes, we are back. We return for episode 2, the hospital radio of saxophone podcasting, Corey Brothers Mouthpieces Podcast. Episode 2 is here. I'm Paul Corey.
I'm Jim Corey.
Together, we are Corey Brothers Mouthpieces. We make handmade saxophone mouthpieces in our little workshop in Yorkshire, England.
And this week, we're going to be featuring an incredible musician and a really good friend of ours, the wonderful Mr. Steve Parry. Steve is a multi-instrumentalist, a studio owner, an incredible arranger and composer, and record label owner. And we had a fantastic time going over to his studio, the old school recording studio, and interviewing him and catching up about all things music. Steve is a wizard of everything.
Everything. We've known Steve since we were young men, and it was wicked to catch up with him.
So we're going to get right into it. This is episode 2, Steve Parry. So we're at the old school recording studios run by the most amazing musician, I think, that we know.
Yeah.
The marvellous Mr. Steve Parry.
Hello. Hello, Steve.
So, Steve, we've got so much to ask you about your career, how it all started, this place, your record label, your work with The Voice and all of that. But I thought we should start right at the beginning, which is how we met Steve.
Yeah. Let's go back in time.
Let's go back to the beginning, and we'll get to all that stuff as we go through. But I think
Travel back in time.
When did you meet Steve, Paul? Because you met Steve first.
1993, wasn't it?
Yeah, Leeds College of Music.
Leeds College of Music, 1993. So I was 19 then. How old were you?
Yeah, I would have been 18.
We only shaved every other day, I think. Didn't have to shave on a Tuesday.
Yeah, the old Leeds College of Music.
The old one.
As it were, the two buildings. Was it Cookeridge Street and the Civic Theatre?
Yeah.
So where had you moved there from?
So
Where were you from originally?
I'm from the Wirral, so we're on the Wirral at the moment. This is a part of the Wirral called Heswall, so this is sort of more towards the North Wales side of it. And I used to live just the other side, is on the Mersey side of it. So, I was about 5 minutes from the river. You could overlook Liverpool and all this sort of thing. Yeah. So that's where I grew up. And then I just ended up in Leeds. I only applied for 2 unis. There was Leeds and Salford. And I didn't get the grades to get into Salford. I only needed 2 E's at A-level. Didn't get that. Those. I got a D in music.
Yeah.
That's handy, isn't it? And then I got something like a U in photography. Whatever that was. So I ended up at Leeds on the graduate diploma course. It was the first year of the BA, but they wouldn't let me on the BA because I didn't have the grades. So I got, which actually I think proved to be a better course for me because there was less.
At the time, I think.
Yeah, there was less. You didn't have to do any dissertations or anything. Yeah, more practical, lots of playing, and ended up doing loads of big bands there, which was great at the time. That was my thing. I was just
so you two moved into a house together, right?
Yeah,
so how did that come about?
I can remember, because I lived in a house with a girl I was going out with at the time, and she finished with me, and I had needed someone to share the house with. So I can still remember it. We were on the stairs, going up the first level up to college, and I was trying to find someone to share the house with me, and Steve was just coming down as I was going up, and I just went, "Hey, Steve, man, do you know anyone who wants to share a house with me next year? It's like £150 a month." And he just went, "Yeah, me." So I was like, "Wicked, all right."
Well, that was it, because I the first house I lived in the first year, I was with, it was a third-year trumpet player who owned the house. It's like it was a similar thing. It was like sort of 3-story, or like 1 room on each story terrace, type of thing. Yeah, back-to-back terrace. Yeah. And so he was a third year when I was a first year, so he was moving out. So then I had nowhere to go. So it was like, when you said that, I was like, perfect. I'll have that. Thank you very much.
It's
So
funny, isn't it?
yes, that was it. Yeah, no, I remember you asking me.
It's weird, isn't it? Such a long time ago. We're so old, man.
So the first time I ever met you, this is a really funny
I
story.
remember this.
So I'd come up to visit you, Paul,
Yeah.
right, and come to Leeds for the first time on the coach, I think, all the way up to Leeds. You met me. We went to your house, the terrace that you two were sharing, and I think it was quite late at night, so I hadn't met you at that point. You said that you had a lecture in the morning, so you were like, right, let's crash. I'll be getting up early, going to this like 9 o'clock lecture, so you were leaving at like 8:15. You said, I'll be back by 10:15 and we'll do something. So I just sort of got my head down and slept, and then was awoken by this crashing noises and people going up and down the stairs. I didn't know what was going on, and then thought, well, I better get up and see what's going on. I remember opening that first level door outside your bathroom, and you were on like a stretcher.
Well, no, I would have been coming down. I would have had a collar on.
Yeah.
One of those like neck collars.
With paramedics that had, like, were helping you down the stairs, and you went, "Hi, you must be Jim. I'm Steve." And I was like, "What is going on?" And you, crooked your neck?
Yeah,
that
it was
morning?
really weird. I was sort of lying in, just in the morning, I was like waking up. I was half asleep, half awake. And I just turned over.
Yeah.
And my neck just went like this. And it was like my head was pointing to the left or something, you know. And I couldn't move it. It was just like, it was locked. His neck was just locked. I was like...
Has it ever happened since?
Well, not like that. I did end up in another collar about 6 months after that.
Right.
It just I don't know what that was from. But it was just like, I've always had rubbish back and neck and all this sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, it just did that. So it was like...
And
well,
they were the tightest, steepest stairs.
yeah, ever.
In
It's
that
like
little
coming round a
terrace,
corner.
Coming round a vertical corner. In a neck brace. But the thing was, when I got back from that thing, I remember Jim saying to me, "Your housemate got took out in an ambulance." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And this is like pre-mobiles, isn't it? So I'm
Yeah.
like, I couldn't phone anyone to find out, is he all right? What's happened? Like, and you were just like, he had a neck thing on, and they took him down the stairs. And so I didn't know what they are. And then you turn up later
Yeah.
or whatever.
I think like later that day you were out, they'd given you
Yeah,
something.
they gave me these, whatever it was, these massive pills, like painkillers.
Muscle relaxers.
But I remember when I was still upstairs, I was still in bed, they gave me the gas and air, right? Because they wanted to straighten my head, but it just wouldn't move. So they gave me the gas and air, and I could hear it. They were moving my head like this, and I could hear my neck go...
High on gas and air.
I was in that collar for about a week or something.
remember,
It was
yeah.
mental.
I remember you coming back that night. Oh, yeah, sorry. It was a bit of a funny introduction. But yeah, that's the first time I met you. And then, you know, we all got to play, right? Because it was my first year at Leeds College of Music. You guys were on the third year at that point. And then, you know, I heard you two all play and then we got in that band, right? Hip Trip.
Oh,
So
yes.
so we started working. That's when I first sort of started playing on stage with you.
Yeah.
And we used to go down to London. I was talking to someone about this last night. It was hilarious. We were on a gig last night and we were talking about our cars and how...
Well, that was the thing I remember, is your Beetle.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
So we were driving home on this gig last night and we were talking about, you know, how everyone's got a lovely car these days.
Yeah.
And I was talking about that gig that we did in Leicester Square.
Yeah.
We'd driven 5 hours probably down, mid-February.
Yeah.
The heaters on my Beetle had completely broke, hadn't they?
Yeah. And the window was stuck open.
The window.
At the top.
We were sat wrapped in blankets. And you were scraping the inside of the window because I couldn't see where I was going. At M1, on the M1 at like 5 in the morning or something.
No, I remember
And
that.
like, what did we get? £5 each
Yeah,
for playing in
probably.
Leicester Square?
Ridiculous amount, wasn't it?
Well, you know, I've mentioned this to you before. There's something that I still do that I got from you from those journeys. Is on the motorway, when you're changing lanes, you always used to try and avoid the cat's eyes.
Yeah, no, boom. You don't get the
just get a nice smooth transition.
Yeah, whoa. And it's hard because you have the two right-hand wheels to get through and the two left. And you have
How
to,
did we fit 4 of us, a trumpet, a tenor, a baritone.
Was the 4?
An
There wasn't
alto.
4, was there? I thought it was just the 3 of us.
Was it just us 3?
I think it was the
Yeah,
3 of
it's
us,
just
yeah.
us.
Was it us 3 at that time?
Well, clearly that makes it
became
easier.
4.
Us three
Still
coming from
trying to
Leeds.
get all them in a Beatle.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
So my first experience of your ridiculous arranging and musical complete genius was in that band, because you were like, we'd voice something out and we'd hit a chord and you'd be like, no. Paul, you play a D, Jim, you play an F sharp, I'll play a ba, and the chord was just instantly like fuller, better, sounded killing. So that's when I realised, it was just great having you in that. And then, do you remember one evening we went back to Ben or Emily's house, or one of those guys, and we were all playing video games, but you were sat at a table writing out 2 arrangements for Nigel.
For Nigel, yeah. No, I do remember
Because
that.
you had a rehearsal in the morning,
Yeah,
and you did late night blues.
yeah, that's
And
right.
was it Friday night at the Catalogue?
No, it wasn't. It was Leonard Blues and Snap. It was a tune called Snap, which was like a
As if you can remember
trumpet.
that, you-
Well, no, the reason I remember Snap is because I'd just written it.
Okay.
And I wanted to hear it. I hadn't had my band play it yet. So I was like, well, I'm going to take this into Nigel. Because I was, for some reason, Bill Ashton had said, oh, that's right. He said they had to move upstairs. He used to rehearse at King's Cross, this dance studio at King's Cross, which was on the ground floor. But they had to move upstairs for some reason for this particular week. And they had this trunk with all the pads in. And he just didn't want to cart this massive trunk up the stairs.
Yeah.
So he said to me, come down and bring as many charts as you want. The rehearsal's yours. So I'm like, great, okay. So I'd sort of written this thing. And I remember taping up the parts on the table.
Yeah.
I was like taping these things up. And then, went to the rehearsal and and we played Snap. I was like, I was quite pleased. I was like, that sounds good. And I could see the band going, yeah, it was fine. It was all right. But it wasn't very exciting, So like, okay, well, I've got Sweet London Bridge with me, which is like, well, you two know, it's London Bridge is falling down to the chords of Sweet Georgia Brown, and it's quite an up thing. But the beginning of it's got a few time changes and tempo changes. So I tried it. This was the second one we were playing, and it was Darren Altman on drums, I remember, and he couldn't quite get these time changes and stuff. So we did it about 3 times, didn't get anywhere. So I just said, do you mind if I play it?
the drums.
I didn't really want to do it. So I just ended up... So I played, and then they ended up taking that chart. They really liked it. Bill liked it.
So hang on, how old were you then? 22?
Yeah, no,
Writing charts
20.
20, writing
20,
charts
I
for
think,
Nigel.
So,
20.
we say Nijo, but there might be people listening that don't know what that is. So it's the National Youth Jazz Orchestra of the UK.
Yeah.
So it was all the young... How old do you have to be in it? Sort of
Well,
17 to sort of 23,
Well,
24?
earlier than that. I mean, if you're a good player, I think Nigel Hitchcock was in it when he was like 12 or
Yeah.
something ridiculous
He is
like that.
rather
He is a bit good. And then, the cut-off age is probably like 20, 21 maybe.
Right.
So it's a youth band, but really good. I remember that was one of the bands when I was like a teenager. I was really into, and I had a few albums. So for me to get my charts played by them, I was like, oh, this is
Yeah, and
great.
there's no printer
And
involved, was
they-
there? It was all handwritten.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
hand copied.
Yeah.
I remember you handing us some that night. How does that look range-wise for the sax?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it looks horrendous, Steve. But you were like, good. That's a good thing. Yeah. But you got those recorded, especially the late night blues, right? Live at Ronnie Scott's, featuring you on the drums.
Well, that was the funny thing, because I'd never been to Ronnie's before, and I remember I was on tour at the time. So this was a little bit later on. So I'd left Leeds and I'd got the gig with the Blues Brothers show, the official tribute to the Blues Brothers. And so it was my first tour. And I remember Bill calling me saying, we're at Ronnie's this particular week and we're probably playing some of your tunes, come down if you want. So I'm like, yeah, brilliant, cool. So I think we were in Bath at the time. So we finished the show at probably, it would have been like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And there was me, the saxophone player on the show, and one of the lead guys, I think the guy who played Jake, came with us. And we legged it out of the theatre, get the train to London, get to Ronnie's, get into Ronnie's, brilliant, names on the door, yes. And it's like, we sort of get there, and they're playing, and it's all cool, and it gets to the break, And Bill comes up to me and said, "Oh, we're doing Late Night Blues."
And
in
this
the
is all
second
being
half."
recorded?
Yeah, this is all I think they were there for the week, I think. So they recorded every night. And he said, "Do you want to play?" I was like, "Yeah, brilliant." So I played drums on that. It was the only time that week they played that tune. And I played drums on it, and it ended up on the album.
Yeah.
Which is quite
With
cool.
your counting.
With my counting, I was doing the whole Buddy Rich, like get the hi-hat going and then count the band in. And it was really weird because I'd never been to Ronnie's before, so it was a whole new experience for me. So, this is good. And I had about 3 beers, and then Bill comes up and says, "Oh, do you want to play?" I'm like, "Yeah." Right, I better stop drinking now. It's like, quick. So, but that was quite cool. I think on that album there's 2 or 3 of my tunes on there. London Bridge is on there, Late Night Blues, and there might be another one.
So Late Night Blues is a big alto feature with Paul Jones.
Yeah, Paul plays it. He's a great player.
Yeah.
I used to do a band with Paul. Well, it was the band that he plays in, but I used to dep in it probably every summer. It was Dan Hamilton was the regular trumpet player, yeah. And so I think he used to have a gig with the Pasadena Roof Orchestra in the summer that paid more money than the brass operas. So he used to phone me up and say, "Oh, I've got these gigs, do you want to do them?" So we're all in France, and Paul was the alto player. And I used to room with Paul, and he's such a good player.
Yeah.
He's still such a good player.
He was one of those ones at college where when you were like in your first year, he was there already and he was like killing.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh.
Yeah. Is that what I've got to do?
Be that good then?
Well, I just remember being in...
I remember him doing Prelude to a Kiss.
Oh, with the Ellington Band.
And he nailed it.
Yeah.
Beyond belief.
Stunning.
It was so right what he played.
Well, I remember one evening being in the other building, as we used to call it, the Cuckoo Street building. There was all the practice rooms that you could get. You didn't have to book them.
No. Yeah.
And I remember, I think I was in one. I'd been doing a bit of practice, and he was sort of down the corridor. I remember walking down, and I remember he had an Abersol play along. I think it was blues is but in all keys.
Yeah.
I think he was playing flute or something. It was come on. So I ended up going through all like blues in like F sharp or something with him, and he was just all over it. I was like, I can't do this. This is F sharp, a ridiculous thing to do.
It might be confusing for people, obviously a lot of people that are listening to this know you, and then some people won't. But you've talked about you playing the drums there, featuring with Nigel, but you're a trumpet player.
Yeah.
So you were originally what do you class yourself?
What am I? I class myself as a trumpet player, a jazz trumpet player, but it's weird because I don't really do that much anymore. But I still, in my head, that's what I am. I'm a jazz trumpet player who can play some lead sometimes as well.
Yeah.
But I started on piano when I was about 4, I think. I remember my uncle used to have a piano. I remember being around at my uncle and aunties, and they had their piano in the dining room. And he used to play a bit. He played a bit of guitar, a bit of piano and stuff. And I think I just used to watch him. And he'd do these little boogie woogie dunk 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 with his left hand and play this little melody. And I think I just watched him and picked it up. So then I'd copy him. And I remember the first tune I ever worked out ever on my own was Amazing Grace, 2 hands, but using this same, like the fifths in the left hand as the same as the boogie woogie thing. And then I just worked the melody out. It was in C, so it's easy, all the white notes, fine. And so that was it. Piano, and I had piano lessons when I was about 7 for a year.
So when did the drums start?
Well, the drums was a bit later. Probably I was about 10. Before that, I had flute lessons when I was about 8 for about a year. And then when I was about 9 or 10, my mum and dad took me to see the Glenn Miller Band UK, the new Flora Pavilion Theatre in New Brighton, which is just up the road. And
I'll tell you a funny story about them in a minute.
Oh, okay. I'm waiting. So I just remember just being mesmerised by this big band. I'd heard of Glenn Miller. I had a few Glenn Miller records, and I had some Ted Heath records. So I knew big bands, but I'd only ever heard them on records, Yeah. But to see this like proper band, and they were just having fun. The trumpet section were just taking the mickey, do you know what I mean? They had, those derby hats mutes that you have, mutes. They were putting them on their heads and like banging their heads together and all this sort of. It was great. So it was like I got obsessed with swing then, and my brother, my half brother, he's a lot older than me. He played drums, so I borrowed his drum kit. And at the time, we lived in this little 2 up, 2 down, like tiny little semi-detached sort of thing. I used to set the drums up in the living room and like really bad swing sort of thing. But I just loved it, and then just carried on playing drums. And it's the instrument I love playing the most, just for enjoyment.
Yeah,
I can sit and play drums for hours and not get bored. Whereas trumpet, it's brilliant when your mouth's working and everything's up to like match play level. But to get there it's a lot of work. So it's just like a bit of hard work sometimes. Trumpet, I'd rather just play to some drums. It's just nice.
Yet when you play the drums, you play it with the command of, let's say, Buddy Rich, with a big band. Well, when you're in a big band with you on drums, yeah, it's quite formidable.
Well, that's the Buddy Rich thing. I remember somebody first, I think I must have been about 15, and there was a mate of mine, I was in like a wind orchestra, and this mate of mine, saxophone player, said, I'm doing this big band rehearsal, and there's short trumpet players, do you want to come along? So I'm like, yeah, great. So it was in Liverpool, went over on the train, and it was just this basement room. There's a place over there called Central Hall. They've done it all up now. It's like a big bar and all this sort of thing. But at the time, it's a little bit run down, and they had these basement rooms that were a bit messed up. And anyway, we sort of went in, and it was this drummer who was a Buddy Rich nut. He loved Buddy Rich. It's called Mark Owen. And he just had a bass drum, a snare drum, and a ride cymbal and a hi-hat, that's it. But his playing used to drive like hell. I was like, this is great, And he did me a tape of Buddy Rich things, and I just used to listen to it obsessively. It's like absolutely amazing, loved it,
So did you get lessons, or did you just teach yourself?
No, I just taught myself. And it was just like picking up things from like the Buddy Rich recordings, or watching Mark, or watching any drummer that I'd seen, and just copy it. And it's the way I've done with any instrument that I pick up. I just try and copy.
Do you like the big band style because of the way it sets things up?
Yeah, maybe. I've just always, like I said, I used to have some Glenn Miller stuff and some Ted Heath record, like 78s, Ted Heath 78s I used to put on. A lot of the stuff I used to listen to when I was little, like from probably the age of about 3 or 4, it was all old music. It was all, my record collection was ridiculous, because I don't think I ever bought a record till I was about 10, because my dad used to bring them home. He was a skip lorry driver, and he'd do like house clearances and all this. Wow. And people would throw out bin bags full of records. Wow. Literally bin bags, like big black bin bags full of records. And he'd just bring them home. And I, here you go, son, And I'd just tip them out onto my bedroom floor. I would play them all. Yeah. The ones I liked, I kept. The ones I didn't like went back in the bag, and they got thrown out. So all the stuff I liked, it went from like Al Jolson. I had Al Jolson 78s and Connie Francis, Johnny Ray, all this stuff. And then there was the Beatles. This is how I got into the Beatles, was through all these records. And I loved Beatles. It was like, I had loads of singles, all of this stuff. I was Paul, actually. He was a big Paul fan. And it was just, So the big band thing was there from the record collection. And I don't know why, I just loved it. And I loved it up until, well, I still love it now. But I remember in my first year in the house that I was sharing with Rich Sims, and I was always putting this big band stuff on. And I remember him coming into my room once, and he said, like, why do you always listen to big bands? Why don't you listen to small band stuff? And I was like, I don't like small band, And I remember he looked at me and went, you'll learn. And I did. He was right, So do you
want to hear how I nearly played with the Glenn Miller orchestra?
Go on.
Someone recommended me for a dep at some point. I think I might have been about 28, 29. And the guy phones me, and we have a little chat. Mm-hmm. And it's all cool, and gives me the dates or whatever, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll see you then. And as I'm putting the phone down away from my ear, I hear the voice on the other end of the phone. Oh no, wait a minute. And I was like, yeah, what? He went, just one last thing. You haven't got long hair, have you? And I went, yes, I have. It's like down my back. And he went, I'm afraid you can't be in the band.
Oh no!
Like,
unless you chop it off.
Glenn Miller's band didn't have dudes with long hair.
Imagine if he hadn't have said that and you
turned
up.
I rock up. Yeah. Could you imagine the band?
Amazing.
I just heard this little voice as I was putting the phone.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Well, do you know, weirdly enough, I did end up playing with that band. Yeah, years later, I get a call. I can't remember who called me now. But I think it was up in Sunderland.
This was on trumpet.
This is on trumpet.
It's a fate thing,
And,
isn't it?
well, this is the thing. And it was such a weird experience for me, sitting in the trumpet section between Dan Amerton and Dale Gibson. And, I mean, I think I was playing third trumpet. I mean, Dale was on lead. And it was just the most surreal experience. This was the band that got me into, like, proper big band. It probably got me into writing, to arranging, It's like that was and I was sitting there playing with them.
Did you see the film of the Glenn Miller story?
No, I've not seen it. However, one of the records I've got is the 10-inch LP of the Glenn Miller story. Yeah, James Stewart.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen it. I should watch it.
Yeah.
So we've got you listened to our first podcast.
Yeah.
And on there was the musical medical dictionary.
Oh yes, that was incredible.
So while we're on the subject of trumpets, we have a disturbing trumpet ailment that we'd like to get
We'd
you
like
on.
to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I'll put my glasses on because
No, that's fine. I probably suffer from this.
So we
I've given
from
in.
this.
I've given in to, like, my eyes are old man's eyes. Right, Steve. So looking through the musical... Last week was jazz dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Have you ever had jazz dysmorphia?
Well, that was the
quavers?
continuous quavers, wasn't it? Yeah, I've been through that. I managed to get myself out of it. It was cold turkey.
Cold
It's one of
turkey.
it's the only way to do it.
Playing semi-breathe.
Yeah.
Or
Just long notes all the time.
Okay, so looking through it, I was looking for something trumpet related.
Yeah.
And I found lead trumpeter's overhang.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it says this, quote, an illness found mainly in big band situations,
Yep.
whereby the lead trumpet, brackets, occasionally joined by the second trumpet, will overhang the prescribed written length of the final note at the end of a piece.
Yeah.
The symptoms become suddenly apparent as the rest of the entire band will have correctly counted the said note and also followed both the MD and listened to the drummer. The overhang is often followed by a violent release of the trumpet from the face, a grimace, then followed by a look of disdain to the other members of the band, whereupon the infected will feel alone, as if only they have a difficult job to do, resentful at being forced to perform such gymnastics. So we know this is a real thing.
It is a real thing. It's genuine.
Lead trumpeter's overhang.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a couple of friends of mine, Damien Bell,
Yeah.
who you might know,
I do
and
know.
Gareth Smith.
Yeah. I know, Gary.
And we were on a gig the other day and we were talking about this and I was trying to get their view on it. So why it happened and where it came from.
Yeah.
So both of them, well, Damien in particular, was citing it back to, or when he first became aware of it, of a Harry Connick big band album called Blue Light, Red Light.
I know it well.
Right. So, Blue Light, Red Light, 1991, and Roger Ingram on lead trumpet. So they were like, we got this album, and this was the first time that they'd heard someone like, and
ridiculous
at the end,
notes.
and then we were talking about it. Surely it happened before then.
It must have done.
Like Ellington Band,
Yeah,
Basie Band.
Well,
Anderson?
I
don't know.
I don't know. Cat Anderson was very. Cat Anderson actually didn't play lead with Ellington. He was probably on like third or something, but then he was given all the high stuff to do. So, which is a good idea. So if you're a lead player, you get quite tired playing high all the time, and then have to do all the gymnastics as well. Whereas this other way, you've got guy who's doing lead, and then someone else who does all the really high stuff.
Wow.
Who can do all that. But Cat Anderson was quite disciplined in some ways. However, I'm just thinking now of recordings where he's not.
I remember
When
Simon
did-
Finch doing it.
Yeah,
in college.
Finch was great at doing all of that.
But that was about that same time as this
Yeah, but
album.
I'm
right?
just
It was
thinking
only a year
Maynard
after.
Ferguson. Maynard Ferguson was probably somebody who could have done stuff like that. But it's
Why does it occur?
Well, I think it's the generation. It's excitement. It's creating excitement, I think, is the idea behind it. Because you've got this really high note.
And you've got up there.
And that's the thing, yeah.
You've got up there. If I've managed to do this, I'm holding it.
And so when everyone's playing that chord, there's a whole chord that everyone's hearing. Then when everyone stops playing that chord, you have this opportunity to go, listen to this note.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
My next part of the question was going to be, so why then don't we all just do it?
Because some notes are better than others, Paul.
Because what?
Some notes are better than others.
Yeah.
But do you know
Those
what, though?
ones up there.
I've done this, right? I've done this on recordings inadvertently when I've multi-tracked myself doing a load of instruments. And I remember doing this. I was doing a show, music for a show, the Full Monty. It wasn't the musical version, it was the play version of the film, if you like. And I had some music. So I'd written this piece of music. I don't think it ended up getting used in the show, but it was like a 70s cop funk type of thing, using the main theme of the film. And I'd play this big last chord, and I'd done that lead trumpeter's overhang, but I'd also done it on the lead French horn part as well, because at the time it's like a really high note I was doing it. Listening back, it sounded rubbish. It was like, what? It's in the middle of the chord, and it's like even though it's high for the instrument, it's not a high note. It's in the middle of the chord. So if it's on the top of the chord, I think in my head it works. You shouldn't do it all the time, but I think sometimes it's good. In fact, there's video footage. But it's on when we did. I've got a name drop now. The Corinne Bailey Ray thing, and I did 6 gigs with you
At Wembley Stadium.
At Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
The first tune we played was "I'd Like To," and my last note I think was a top C sharp or something. Yeah. So the band sort of finished this last chord, stopped, and I just hung on a little bit. And you could hear it echoing around Wembley Stadium. Yeah. And I'm like, this is great. That's my C sharp.
Now, that was a day of 2 amazing things. Your overhang at Wembley. And I think, unofficially, I'm the first sax player to play a bottom B flat.
Yeah.
In the new Wembley.
Yeah, the new
Stadium.
Wembley. Yeah, I remember that.
Because they just built it. We'd done that thing with John Legend.
Mercy, Mercy Me, wasn't it?
And they changed the key at the last moment. Do you remember?
I do. I remember having charts in about 4 different keys.
Yeah, and we didn't know until the day which one he wanted to do it in. We'd rehearsed them in loads. We were about to go on. Oh, he's doing it in, I think it might have been B flat. Yeah. And I was like, I can get down. And then on that footage is me playing a line and you going, yes!
I know.
You look at me do it. Go on.
I can remember that day. I watched it on the telly.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did Jim get that leather jacket from? Like, that's amazing.
We got
I've
style,
never seen
didn't we?
him in that leather jacket. And I rang you up and you were like, I had to give it back.
I know. I tried to steal it. And the stylist came up, excuse me, the jacket. I was like,
That was amazing, that jacket. It suited you so good as well.
I remember that our dressing room was next door to Spinal Tap.
No.
It's just brilliant. I walked up to Derek Smalls and shook his hand. It's like
amazing.
Superb.
What a day that was.
That was a mental.
It was incredible. I remember going on stage there, and we had an amazing tour manager called Doe Phillips, who still does tour managing, and she's from Brooklyn, I think. She had this amazing, Brooklyn accent, and I remember sort of thinking, I'm a bit nervous, and she could see it. It was a big gig,
slightly.
Live Earth, Wembley Stadium, and she went, are you nervous? I went, yeah, it's Wembley Stadium. There's sort of like 65,000 people out there. And she went, it's the 2 million on telly you want to be worried about. Because we were playing Mercy, Mercy Me, which was the song of the Live Earth. And that song was being synced up to all the Live Earths around the world at that point. And, you know, a worldwide audience
Yeah.
of how many people it was.
You all look good though.
We did look
It
good.
was
Styled
good.
up.
Yeah, I got a haircut, free haircut.
Did you?
Yeah.
You did
What,
that,
there
remember?
and then at the
Got
gig?
free haircut. There was like, you got backstage, there was like, the hairdresser's there, free haircut. Yeah, it's free. Clearly I'm going to get one. Oh, man.
So, trumpet overhang, lead trumpet
Can it be
overhang.
cured then? Do you
Can it be
think?
cured?
Or once you've got that disease, does it become more apparent gradually through your career? You just become used to the overhang.
I think the only cure is to just never play again.
Is it ever a fireable offence? Do you think?
It should be.
In a recording studio.
In a recording studio. I tell you, when you said occasionally joined by the second trumpet, now that is a sackable offence.
For the second trumpet.
If you're second trumpet, you should not do that.
No,
You know,
that's when they
there's-
think they're in with the big boy,
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah,
at
but
school,
they're not.
like,
They're second.
You're second, you can't.
Yeah, it's not lead. It's second.
You don't get to choose whether you can do that yet.
No.
No,
See,
only
we've
me.
decided that we're going to start a new one, which is the saxophone preempt.
Preempt.
So the band leader's going to count in 1, 2, 1, 2, da,
Yeah,
and we're in early.
And you're in early.
To be heard.
Yeah, we're here. We're here as well. We're at the front. Can you not see us?
When did
We've
you
got
first
notes
start
too.
doing that? Oh, it was a Jim Corrie big band out there. All the saxes came in early. It was about 2022.
Sax is coming.
It's just what they do. You should get a big band together that just does that. Every single tune. It's like semi-quaver before everybody else.
Well, can we ask you about, we've talked about things, and when you left Leeds College of Music, and you mentioned earlier on about the Blues Brothers and doing that show.
Yeah.
When you were on that show, is that when you really started getting into like arranging and MD and like in a you know, you're not at music college anymore.
Yeah.
You're on the actual professional scene. You're a professional musician. Is that where that thing started?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always ended up sort of being a band leader at some point in, like, even before that. Before I went to Leeds, there was a few of us in this wind orchestra that I used to play in, and we started our own jazz orchestra. It was through a little gig that needed musicians, and we sort of put it together ourselves. But I was the one who sort of knew about jazz, really. I was the only one who, because I had that Buddy Rich tape and all these sort of things. So I ended up leading that. So I've always sort of done that, and then got to college and started my big band and led that.
The Steve Parry big band.
Yeah, the
from
big band
hell.
from hell.
Man, it was.
That was.
band.
But I think my thing is, I don't mind not being the band leader as long as somebody is.
Yeah.
If there's chaos, I can't handle it, and that's when I end up going, no, hold on, it needs to be, this needs to happen, blah, blah, blah. So I become the band leader, if you like. So I've always sort of ended up doing it in one way or another. But with the Blues Brothers thing, it started off as just, I auditioned for a tour. It was a 6-month tour.
So you were booked as a trumpet
Yeah,
player.
just a trumpet player. And then it was towards the end of that tour, probably would have been 5 months in, I got a call from the producer saying, would you like to be musical director on the next tour? And he'd obviously seen something of, like, in rehearsals or whatever, with me sort of always...
Changing voice.
yeah, constantly moving things
This is
about.
no good.
This sounds better.
We need to do this. No, but I was always sort of looking around and making sure I knew. I always like knowing what everyone's doing, not just what I'm doing. So it's just something I like to have in my brain, so I know how I fit into
Yeah,
what
the
everything else is going on.
great thing to
So
do.
yeah, so I'm always like looking around. So he must have seen that sort of thing in me, and so he phoned me up, and I remember it was a Sunday. We just got to Southend. It was on that first tour. And he said, would you like to be MD on the next tour? And I thought, this is great. I'd love to. He said, well, come into London on Thursday, into the office, and we'll have a chat about it. So
this is the guy that owned the company.
Yeah,
that
this
just
is-
put all these shows
Yeah,
out.
so this is David Pugh. He's a West End producer. He's done lots of things. I mean, Blues Brothers, I think, was his first big show that he had.
So this toured through Europe.
Well, I went to Europe with it later on, but this was initially, it was just a UK
Right.
tour, just 6-month UK tour. So I went to the office and he sort of talked me through what I would have to do as an MD and all this sort of thing. And as I was leaving, I was getting out of the chair to leave, and he said, "Oh, by the way, how old are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm 22 today. It was my birthday." I said, "Oh, there you go. It's a nice birthday present. Happy birthday."
Yeah.
So that was it. So I ended up doing the MD thing on Blues Brothers, and that lasted years. I was sort of involved in one way or another for probably about 15 years on that show, but I toured with it probably for about 8.
So when you became MD, did you like rewrite it?
No, it was...
I bet you did.
Well, it ended up...
One day at a time. The charts were different than the next day.
It sort of evolved because I got given the previous MD, who was the keyboard player, he'd given me his charts. He like this big stack of charts, you know. And I remember the first day of rehearsals of like me being MD.
Chucking them in the bin.
Well, no, this is the thing. Because I was...
Nope. I'll write you that in about 10 minutes, lads.
Even though I said I like to know what everyone's doing, at that point, it was a very generalistic view of it. I didn't know specifically what everyone else was doing. Right. So I just remember that first week of rehearsals, it was with the singers. We had all the 2 front guys and the 3 backing singers. And I was playing piano, and I had this stack of music on one side of the piano, and I was just looking at this music. I was trying to teach the backing vocals because I didn't really know what the BVs were supposed to be doing, really. So I was like, right, well, this is your note. My brain was just focused on this stack of music, and I didn't really acknowledge any of the singers. It was like, well, this is what you need to do. This is what, and we got through it. It was fine. And by the end of the week, it had sunk into my head as well as theirs. But then over the years, because I had to teach everyone what their part was, I knew everyone's parts, like backwards, you know. And I ended up playing on that show. I was trumpet player, but I've actually ended up doing drums. I did a few tours on drums.
What, on the Blues Brothers?
On Blues Brothers, and I did probably about 2 or 3 weeks on keys on one tour because we were in between keyboard players, and there was we didn't have a keyboard player, so we got the old trumpet player back to play trumpet, and I play keys. And then I also did one gig on bass, which was hilarious.
Playing Donald
Duck.
Oh
man! But on this, our bass player, we were in Hull. I remember Hull on Earth, and we were. Our bass player had kidney stones. He ended up going into hospital, and we had 2 shows. It was a Friday. We had a 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock show, and it was the bass player, our adept bass player, couldn't get up from London in time for the first show. So it was either the keyboard player plays left hand or I play bass and we do it with that trumpet. And I thought, well, having a real bass is probably a better sound. Yeah. But I hadn't played bass for months and months. And he had this bloody 5-string, this Music Man 5-string, which confused the hell. Yeah, it was like, what's this other string? No idea. So
Take it off.
Yeah, should have done. So I ended up playing the show on bass. And it was just, and the blisters on my fingers, just like these 3 fingers on my right hand were just like, it was ridiculous. But I just ended up learning everyone's parts as MD. And things did evolve over the years, but then they evolved in, I think it was a more authentic way, because when I joined the show, the band was playing sort of in their own way, which was fine, it was all right, but it wasn't very authentic to the records, the Blues Brothers record. So over the years, I ended up bringing back elements from the record and saying, no, we should do it like this. And, you know, you don't need to play that, you can play this and just keep it simple, or don't do that because that's out of character with the music, you know. Yeah. And it was great, and it really honed it. I remember by the time I was playing drums, which is probably about sort of 5 years into my tours with it, we had the same band for about 2 years, and everyone was in the same mentality, and it really focused down. I've got recordings of that tour, and it's brilliant. If you listen back to it, it's so tight and it's so authentic in its way. I think it probably could still be more authentic within like the sounds, like the bass sound wasn't quite Duck Dunn, or the guitar sound wasn't quite Steve Cropper, but the way of playing was more correct than it was when I first started.
Nearly wrote my car off on the way to an audition for that, and I didn't.
Did you?
Do you remember?
No.
I came down. I was going to audition for it, but on the way, I totally crashed my car and like smashed the 2 front wheels into like squares, basically, going up this curb thing. And I didn't get there or whatever, I didn't do it.
Man.
But like, that was on the way down to London to you.
When was that? What year can you remember?
It must have been the 2nd year of you doing it.
Well, that was when Joel Purnell probably ended up getting...
Right, yeah. And
Getting
I was
on
on the way
that
and I
tour.
didn't get down there because I just trashed my car on the way.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Funny.
Mental.
Funny, man.
So from that Blues Brothers show, you got involved to MD loads of different shows for that company. Is that
well,
right?
that was it. Yeah, there was the theatre thing really started to happen for me then. Excuse me, because David Pugh, he's a theatre guy. He's not really a rock and roll producer. I mean, Blues Brothers is an anomaly for him. He liked the image. When he first started doing it, he'd never heard of the Blues Brothers. And it was Con O'Neill, who's an actor, a Liverpool actor, who he knew, who was doing a Blues Brothers band in Brighton. I think he was doing like a pub gig or something. Said, come down and watch. And David just liked the image, the hat and the glasses and the suit. He just loved it and thought this would be a great theatre thing. So his thing is more plays and stuff like that. So I started doing... What was the first thing I did for him after that? I think it was Godspell. It was a production of Godspell.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah, the first one, there was 2 productions. The first one, it was just in Chichester. We did it for like 4 weeks in Chichester. So I MD'd that and I was playing drums. And then later on, we did a UK tour. It was a different version of it. Again, I played drums on it. So it was that. And then the first sort of proper big theatre thing I did for him was a thing called The Play What I Wrote, which is like based on Morecambe and Wise sort of humour. Right. It wasn't about Morecambe and Wise, but it had all those jokes were in there. And we'd just done a West End version of Blues Brothers. So we were in London and this show was rehearsing. They were in rehearsals for it, but they had a problem with the guy who was doing the music for it. I don't know what it was, but it was like the 2 guys who had written the show and were starring in it knew this guy. They'd known him for years, but there was some problem with him. And David knew this, and he said, I want you to go in and just play piano for the rehearsals, but there might be something else, from it. I just want want them to get to know you as a person. I'm like, okay. So it was in Union Chapel, the rehearsals were in Highbury and Islington. And so I was just there for like the week. I'd just go in during the days. I think I was doing Blues Brothers in the evening. So I'd just go in the day and sort of play piano for them. And this Kenneth Branagh was the director. So I got to meet him. He's fantastic, he's superb. And then it was Hamish McColl and Sean Foley, who were the 2 main guys who'd written it. And Toby Jones was the 3rd actor. Toby Jones has gone on to do loads of stuff. He's like big Hollywood. In fact, his biggest thing, I think, is probably being Dobby in all the Harry Potter things. Wow. Yeah, he's the voice of Dobby. Cool. So he was sort of there. So I was just playing piano, and one day this guy comes in who's the music guy, and everything sort of stops, and they all go out the back, and I was like, for about 5 minutes, something had happened, and this guy just storms out the door, and Hamish comes in and goes, looks like you've got yourself a job, Steve. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And that job was basically creating the music for this show. And there wasn't loads of music. It was maybe 5 songs or something, but they're all big band sort of things, and they had to be recorded. So I recorded all the music. I just multi-tracked.
Yourself?
It was one of the first times I'd multi-tracked myself as a big band.
As an entire big band.
Yeah.
Saxes and everything.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff. So that was... I didn't have a house. I was still at my mum and dad's, really. And there was like a front room that was my music room. So I just set up my stuff there. I had my drums and my trumpet. And I had, my old saxophones and old trombone. And I just sort of multi-tracked everything up, like Bring Me Sunshine and all these sort of things,
As you do.
As you do on a Sunday afternoon.
Sorry, Mum, no Sunday dinner today.
Multi-track.
I've got the baritone part to put down.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, I didn't have a baritone at the time. What I used to do is I'd play it on alto and I'd use a pitch shifter.
Octave down.
Octave down. It was in the section. It was all right. It was fine, And the funny thing is, this show was resurrected fairly recently. It was like the 20th anniversary of it or something. Was it last year or something like that? And they used the old recordings. I was going to re-record everything, but I just didn't have the time. So they ended up using these old recordings from 20 years ago of me recording on this like VS 1680 Roland thing, hard disk recorder with a hard drive that was 5.5 gig.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the hard drive. It was like, and it just, recorded. It was, before I had a computer system. It was just on that, and that was it. It still sounded all right. Yeah. It was fine,
So we're getting to like, people that are interested, and everyone that I speak to knows, what you do, and getting into the voice and the TV side of it. And again, for people that are listening, the Voice is everywhere across the world, right? In America,
yeah.
And so the Voice UK. You've obviously got into the industry here. You're working with big names. You're associating them in that circle. So how did it get from there to the TV work, to the Voice? What people did you meet? And
it was a funny thing because it was not really through anybody of influence. I didn't meet a TV producer or anything like that. That was through just playing in bands. So when I sort of stopped doing Blues Brothers, the reason I stopped doing Blues Brothers in about 2006, 2007, I was still involved in it, but I didn't have the time to do the tours because I started doing lots of other gigs, just playing with various bands, function bands or whatever, all those sort of things. And it was because I can play a few different instruments, it was handy.
A few?
Because
I can play everything. I just got loads of gigs.
Well, it was the thing, because I'd get trumpet gigs, then someone else would phone me, can you do drums on this? There was a function band called Alpha Connection that I used to dep on trumpet. But because I'd then get to know them and say, I'll play a bit of drums as well, then I get a call saying, can you play drums for us? And so I ended up just doing loads of different bands. And there was a singer round here called Tony James, she just started doing little bar gigs. And there was her and a piano player called Pete Watson, who went to Lipper. And he just sort of, I think he'd answered an advert. She'd only ever put one advert, for I need a piano player, and it was the only advert he'd ever answered. So they'd end up working together, and she got a band together, and I ended up playing in her band. So I was a trumpet player, and there was only two horns. It was trumpet and tenor, and I was she asked me, can you do some horn arrangements? And I was thinking, well, maybe later on you might have a bigger horn section. So I think I did a 4-piece horn section arrangement for I think it was about 20 or 30 tunes for her. So I was just doing these gigs with Pete, and Pete knew me as an arranger. He also knew Dave Tench, who's the musical director of The Voice. Yeah. And so I think he was a year younger, or a couple of years younger than Dave. And he'd followed Dave through Wigan Youth Jazz Orchestra, Lipper, down to London. And Dave had sort of got into the theatre thing, and he'd ended up doing the pop thing. And basically, whenever Dave left a gig, he would recommend Pete to take over. They're both keyboard players. That's fine. So when Dave ended up with The Voice, he'd sort of been headhunted for The Voice. He'd been recommended by whoever. And he'd sort of inherited half a band, half a team for The Voice. The first series he did was Series 3. And he had half the band from last time, and he'd brought in people who he wanted as well. And for the next series, he wanted his own team, but he didn't know any arrangers. So he said to Pete, do you know any arrangers? And he passed my number along. Wow. And that's basically how I got in there. So I remember it was in the summer. What year would that have been? 2013 or something? Something like that. Summertime. And I'd gone out for a walk, and I'd left my phone in the house, and I'd just come back, and it was a missed call. Didn't know the number. Voicemail. Check the voicemail. This is Dave Tench from The Voice. Can you give us a call back? So I spoke to him, and he basically said, there's this job. It's writing out all the music for the band. Would you be into doing it? And I was like, well, yeah, it sounds great. All I was doing was a few gigs and a few jazz gigs, a few function gigs. And I didn't really have a proper thing. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then he spent the next 25 minutes telling me how stressful it would be. So I'm like, okay, this is fine. But the conversation was brilliant because he goes, right, I can read, I'm fine. His premise was for the band. The previous band he didn't like the idea of because they were all just basically like pit musicians, not pit musicians, but they were brought in because they just read the music and do the thing, and that was it. And what he wanted was a pop sensibility where you bring the musicians in and you mould the song to the singer. So all these people he'd brought in were brilliant musicians for that reason, but they weren't necessarily readers. However, you needed charts because the first series I did, the blind auditions had 120 singers. So that's 120 songs, right? You can't memorise 120 songs, let alone edits of 120 songs. They're all edited down to a minute and a half. So you need charts. So he said to me, he goes, my reading's fine, I can do that. The second keys player, who'll deal with like string parts and what have you, all the little bits and bobs. He can read, he's fine. He said the drummer, his reading's okay, but he's not really a reader. He can sort of do it, but this is Ash Sohn, by the way. He's like one of the top pop drummers in the country. He's incredible. He's played with everyone. And he said, the bass player can read, but only in treble clef. And the guitarist can't read at all. So I'm like, okay, chord symbols? He goes, not sure. So I'm like, so I said, okay, that's fine. I can deal with that. So he said, I'll send you basically an example of what you might be asked to do, and I'll give you a time limit of whatever it was, 2 hours or something to write this chart. And I think it was a Beyonce song, maybe, can't remember now. Anyway, I sort of did it and ended up getting the gig, and it was great. It was a brilliant experience. That first initial like going into the blinds, because I'd never done anything like this before ever. I mean, I'd written arrangements, that's fine, but the whole thing with the voice, my title is arranger, but it's not really what I do. I'm a transcriber. That's the main crux of what I do.
So you're transcribing all different genres,
everything.
Motown to pop.
To pop, to dance, to there might be some big band in there.
And changing keys.
Yeah.
And trying to fit it in the edit time.
Yeah, well, Dave does the edits, so that's one thing that's taken care of. So the way it happens is the songs are chosen, Dave edits them down to 90 seconds, and there's a Dropbox, there's a voice Dropbox, and everything goes in this Dropbox. So you get the edits folder, and I just, all these edits come in, and I just write down what the songs are so I can tick them off when I've done them. And so it's basically just transcribing anything. It could be anything, like you say. It could be country and western, it could be dance, it could be pop, it could be Motown, anything goes. Ed Sheeran, like some John Lewis versions of, like just piano and ethereal pads and all this sort of thing. Anything can happen.
And then trying to make it readable for people that don't read.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing. So the bass player reading only treble clef, Ben Epstein.
How did that come about?
Well, Ben started life as a classical guitar player.
Okay.
So and he also played French horn. So he's a brilliant musician. He's incredible. He's played for a few people. He was Duffy's bass player.
Yeah, right.
He's played for Stormzy. Loads of different people. He's a brilliant player. But his reading was basically as a classical guitarist when he was at school. And then when he became a pop bass player, you don't have to read, do you? You need to learn the song from ear. Yeah. So it's fine. He didn't need to learn bass clef at all. So I would... I'll go, okay, I'll write it in treble clef, that's fine. Well, I'd write it in bass clef and then it would be transposed in Finale. I use Finale. I think I'm about the only person in the country who uses Finale and not Sibelius.
That's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you that later on about what you use.
Yeah,
and I know that you use Finale.
Yeah.
Why is that? Just you like it? You prefer it?
No, it was the reason I chose it is because it was the only thing I'd heard of when I chose it. I think maybe I'd heard that Harry Connick Jr. used it or something. I'd heard of it. And so when I was...
And you still use it?
And I still use it now because I think I bought it in 1998 or something.
Really?
And I'd never heard of Sibelius. And so by the time I had heard of Sibelius, I'd been using Finale for so many years, and I know it backwards.
Does it change like Sibelius does?
It does a little bit. They do update things most of the time for the better. Occasionally, there's things that I wish they'd kept. But most of the time, it's fine and it works great for me. And, you know, it's just whatever you get used to.
Yeah.
You know, if I'd been using Sibelius for 20-odd years, it'd be fine for me, you know.
Yeah.
And Finale would confuse me because it's just different ways of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think with Finale, it allows you to do anything you want, really. Whereas Sibelius is more like, this is what we think you should do.
Yeah.
And this is how you do it.
So you can be more creative.
You can be more creative with Finale in a way. Maybe, I don't know how much of that side that I use that isn't available on Sibelius because I don't know Sibelius. But there are certain things that, taken from being a handwritten copyist, that I used to enjoy doing and used to enjoy seeing on the page. I can do all of that with Finale. Whatever I want to do that it would have been handwritten at the time, I can do that on Finale, which is great, you know. So it's that's just, it's my system that I use, and I've always used it.
Yeah.
And I've got it to a point now with my templates where it's just everything's so quick. I can deal with, you know, when I started on The Voice, I've been using Finale for a number of years, but there's certain things that are repetitive on The Voice that I didn't really know about. So over a period of maybe like 3 or 4 years, I'd honed things into templates, and that looks better if I do that, or I can put that on a fast key or whatever, you know, I can just bang and it's in.
Well, I remember you kindly invited me to do one of those voice things.
The recordings,
Yeah, and I remember we were working on the Coach's songs.
That's right,
But then there was other things going on. I remember, because we all had the headpieces on.
Yeah.
And there was a problem with one of the things, and you were sort of set up under the stage.
That's right, yeah, I'm behind the screens, basically.
Yeah, and I could hear it going on, right, we need to change the key, Steve. Okay, no problem, you know, and then within like 20 seconds, the whole band had new charts on their iPad. Boom, you know, it was so quick the way you worked.
Well, this is it. It's become, like I say, when I first started, it was a new thing. And I was doing things which you'd think would be fine, like putting repeats in for, you know, if a chorus is 8 bars, but it's just really 4 bars repeated or whatever, I'd put repeats in. And I learned very, very quickly that was not a good thing to do, because we work to a click on Pro Tools, and Pro Tools doesn't have repeats, it carries on. Bar numbers carry on.
Yeah.
So when we get to bar 20 and I'm going back to bar 12 on the score, no, Pro Tools is on bar 21 and it carries on. So I learned in that first bit of the blinds, like, I shouldn't have done this.
So it's like through writing.
Yeah, everything, there's no repeats on anything. The only time I write repeats is if we're doing, for instance, on the live shows, they have playoffs, like for the end of the show when the credits are rolling, we might just be playing whatever the song is and it's just a 4-bar loop. Then I will write repeats because it doesn't really matter. We'll work out what it is on Pro Tools or whatever it is, you know. But it's these 4 bars because you just want to keep it small. Otherwise, you end up going on to 3 pages, you know, on the iPads, which you don't really want to do for a playoff. You know, the guys just want to see what's in front of them and go, right, I know what that is. They don't have to look at it anymore and they can just play, you know. Whereas when we're doing the songs for the singers, it has to be, you know, you can't be putting repeats or anything like that. And I used to try and keep things on 1 page as well, because I thought, well, it's not a good thing. I don't want them, they don't want to have to turn pages and stuff. But now, you know, you can do it with Bluetooth pedals or like with handwritten music copying, you'd work out if you've got a 4-bar rest. Well, that's a fine time to turn the page. You know, it's not a problem. Yeah. Even if you've only used 3 staves on page 1, it's okay. You've got time to go to page 2 and then you've got the rest of it and you can just get on with it. You know, it's fine. So now I don't mind doing 2 pages. Yeah. Very occasionally it goes to 3 for if it's Dave's part and he's got 2 staves sometimes, then it might go to 3. But most of the time, 1 or 2 pages.
Has there been any absolute disasters? As in, I don't know, maybe it's like ridiculous things that you've had to transcribe that have been so horrendous that you couldn't figure it out?
Yeah.
Or something that you've done and it's just not played? Or
Well,
is there any one time you were just like, this is not working?
I do remember a time on, I can't remember which series it was, but we were doing, was it a John Newman song? And it had this really complicated bass part that was quite subby sounding. And now I've come to a way of getting around this, but at the time I didn't have this technique. So I was trying to figure out what the hell this bass part was, and it was really fast, like semi-quaver, like all this sort of stuff going on, and really low and subby, and trying to discern that in the mix. It was horrible, and I remember being there for about an hour and a half, just on the bass part, it was horrible. And Caroline, who's my girlfriend, who I wasn't living with at the time, called round, and I opened the door to her, and I must have looked horrendous, like sweat pouring. And she's like,
"What do you want?"
Yeah, I was like, she's like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "I've just spent an hour and a half on a bass part. It wasn't nice at all. However, now
Give me a cuddle.
I've figured out now, and this is a tip from the top. If you're trying to work out a bass part that's really subby or fast or whatever, pitch shift it up an octave, pitch shift the whole file up an octave, and it just pops out. You can hear what the notes are. I'm like, why didn't I think of this earlier? But at this point, I was like, oh, this is horrible. But with things, really complicated stuff, things that we don't really get much anymore. We used to, when it was BBC, we'd get a lot of like Disney songs or something that would come, and it's like full on orchestra. And that would take me a long time. I ended up being quite good at doing...
Slightly long time. Yeah.
Well, this is it.
Just listen to this orchestra.
I'd get that. At the moment now, I'm 9 years in doing the voice, so I'm pretty quick now. I've got things quite quick. But at the time, maybe going back 5-6 years, I'd put my time limit on doing a pop song maybe as like an hour and a half. I could do a pop song in an hour and a half. That'd be fine. Disney thing would come up. I'd be there for like 4 hours or something. You got the strings, you got all the woodwinds, trying to pick everything out. And although we haven't got those instruments live, we'd have a string programmer. So he would need all the charts. I'd give him the first, second, violins, violas, cellos, whatever. I'd have to write all those things out for him to do. And then the woodwinds, sometimes we'd get, because we have a horn section that would overdub stuff for various songs. So you get the saxophone player to play flute. So that'd be fine, get him to do that. And then you might just do like an oboe sound on the keyboard or something. Samples are good. So with everything else going on, that would just fit in. It'll be all right. But yeah, that was... Luckily, I haven't had to do that for a while.
People don't realise how quick you are, right? The first time I witnessed your excessive speed of ears... I was living with Brian Daves at the time. You'd come round. I think I'd spent a whole day on this coda of Everything Happens to Me, Phil Woods with Tom Harrell.
Oh, yeah.
And it was where Phil Woods goes into this coda, da-da-da-da-da, but he moves the theme around. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and it's like, Tom Harrell's playing these long notes underneath it. And I was doing a gig at Scarborough Jazz, and I wanted to play Everything Happens to Me, and I was like, I want this coda, I want to be woo. And I couldn't transcribe it, and I'd spent a whole day sat at the piano. What is that? Where's that going? Brian was like, Steve's coming round in a minute. Oh, great, And I remember, I went, can you ask him for me? Can you ask him? Yeah, I didn't want to ask it. Even though I'd known you for a long time. You came round, we were chatting, we played music, and then Brian went, oh, I think Jim's got something he wants. You were like, oh yeah, put it on, go on, put it on. Yeah. And I remember we got to this coda and you listened to it, and your eyes, you were like, oh, nice, oh. And you were listening to this movement, oh. And then just went to the piano and just played it. Oh, he's going, and you had the Tom Harrell voice in underneath. And I'm going...
My thumb's that voice.
I'm trying to like write it down because I can see what you're doing. And you were like, oh, it's nice that, And I still use that coda.
Really?
To this day,
Excellent.
But that's when I realised, my experience with you, just how quick you hear things and how your just ears.
Steve is like that bit in the film Amadeus when when Salieri.
Oh yeah, in Mozart's in the bed.
Thing. No, when he writes him a thing to welcome him.
Oh right,
and then Mozart's like, but perhaps, and he changes it, doesn't he? Right? That's what you are, Steve. But when we were at music college, you were like that in like arranging classes because we were like, okay, voice and saxophones like this, doubling the trombone on the thing. Right, we were trying to do this new learning to us, but he knew it all already. And was like Mozart, like with his hand up. But perhaps if it was voiced this way, Trevor Vincent, the teacher, would be like, yes, Steve, that would be excellent. But everyone else is not there. It's just you.
You mentioned the Corinne Bailey Rae thing, and I remember we went to the Isle of Man.
Yes, that was the first time I played with the band. Yeah,
so the Corinne and the two backing singers were working on something, and they couldn't quite get this voicing right between the two backing singers, Corinne, and I think Jan, the guitarist, Jan Osborne, brilliant guitarist, now lives in LA. They four voices were singing this thing, and you were obviously new to the group, and I remember you stood there like, and they were, they'd spent 15, 20 minutes in this rehearsal at this big theatre, wasn't it? And I was like, can you sort that out? And you were like, yeah. And I remember, because you didn't want to, because you were new into the thing, you didn't want to, you were very diplomatic, and I said, like, maybe Steve, and I remember Corinne looking over, and you were like, you sing that, you sing that, you sing this, you sing this. And then they just did it, and it was like instantly sorted. And Corinne went, yeah, that's it, that's what I want it to be. Again, just like, I have a better solution.
I've got a thing, going back to Mozart again, actually. I read a story about Mozart that he was going to a gig once with his scores, and he had found out that on fourth French horn was this dude who he hated. So he rewrote the whole fourth French horn part of this thing to this insane, nearly technically impossible thing. Just to do this guy in, right?
Excellent.
On the gig. Have you ever done it? Ever thought about it?
I've never thought about it. I don't know.
Apart from making me play bass sax on that crazy gig.
Yeah, but that was good.
That was good. That wasn't out of hate.
Well,
or was it?
No, it wasn't. Because I remember, that bass saxophone, I remember being at college and knowing that saxophone was there, but never seeing anybody play it.
No.
Yeah. I'm like, it's sitting there. Why is nobody... So that's why I said to you, do you want to play it? And then I remember saying, what key would you like to play in?
What did I say?
Yeah, I think you said G minor or something like that. Or A... Yeah, G minor. So you would have been in A minor.
Okay.
But I've got the video. It's there, actually. The video for that is down there.
What?
And I just remember you coming up to the front microphone, because I did make you do that.
Yes, you did.
Walk out to the front microphone, and there's a moment just before you start playing. You adjust the microphone, and then your eyes go up, and you go like, "Here we go," and you're in.
He just did it to make me look like a Smurf with this giant sax and a little me.
That's a good moment, though. It sounded great.
Who was the bass player on that?
Bass player on that gig was John Donnelly,
That's
I think,
right.
if I remember.
I remember him saying that when you did that feature, he had to go up.
To get out of the way.
To get out of the way of the frequencies of the bass sax. He was like, we're getting a bit like... Brr. So he went up. And that was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, you're down there,
Yeah,
I need to
I'm
go
going
up
to go
here.
up here. Yeah.
That was really interesting.
That was a funny gig.
I'd never played one.
Well, it was...
And because it was from the instrument room, and it was this relic, this holy relic that you're not even allowed, like Spinal Tap, don't even look at it.
Yeah. It was
that.
Mark 6, wasn't it?
It was a Mark 6 bass. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It was beautiful.
I remember you saying the reed on it reminded you of a tree trunk or something like that. A branch. A branch off a tree. But no, going back to writing horrible parts for people.
Someone deliberately?
Not badly, I don't think.
Is there anyone you would do that for?
Let me have a think.
No, don't say the name.
No,
maybe now is the time to start thinking.
Don't know what I've done to Steve today. My chart is like a nightmare.
Musical sabotage.
I always used to like writing, not stupidly difficult on purpose parts, but things that I thought, oh, that'll be interesting, but I know that'll be difficult.
Yeah. That's good,
But it's one of the, like, there's the I don't, you probably remember this. There's a sax solo I wrote in My Favourite Things.
Oh my God.
There's an arrangement. And funnily enough, I got a call from Al Wood, right? I haven't seen Al Wood for years. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I get this, my phone rings and it's Al Wood. I'm like, amazing. So how are you, Al? You know, and we had this great conversation. He said, I'm going to apologise for you now. I was like, why? It's like, well, I've just done this recording with it was a Doncaster Jazz Orchestra, a big band, wherever it is, and we've done your arrangement of My Favourite Things. I was like, oh, great. He goes, I had to rewrite the sax solo.
Because they couldn't do it.
Because he goes, they were recording at Abbey Road.
Yeah.
And he was like, I didn't want things to fall apart at Abbey, so I rewrote it. I'm really sorry. I was like, it's fine.
Do you know what? We talked about that sax solo the other day, didn't we?
Yeah,
Every single bar is a different rhythm in 3/4.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you can latch on to.
No.
Because you think, oh, this will repeat, or I'll feel this little hook or this little figure.
very clever,
and it
Steve.
doesn't.
But the other problem with it is it's not easy to practice slowly either, because you can only breathe if you play it up to tempo. If you don't play it, there's nowhere to breathe if you slow it down. It's just like, when Al called me about that, I got my pads out. I got the big band pads out, right? I got the lead alto part out, and I put it on the stand. I was looking at it, and I was going to have a go at like trying to play it on alto, and it was like, oh, I can't. This is too hard.
That, you know, your band and that tune and different tunes put fear into some of the best musicians we've all played with. And we'd all drive over to do gigs with you or rehearsals, and people were genuinely frightened about what was going to confront the good players, like shit-hot players.
Well, I always remember the last gig that we did with that band. It was years ago. It was at Wigan. We did it. It was like a social club at Wigan. It was a good gig, but it was on a Sunday. And I always remember you saying, "Oh yeah, Sunday roast."
Sunday roast.
Sunday roast.
God, man.
The best ones we ever did with that band were the school gigs.
Oh yeah.
Where you'd got a budget to take that band into secondary schools.
Yeah.
Over here this way.
Yeah,
wasn't
it was round here. It was not far from
But
here.
it was like at their morning assembly.
Yeah.
So like 8:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And then we all realised we're coming from Leeds.
From Leeds, it's
We've
2
got
hours drive.
We've got 2 hours drive in rush hour. And I think we all left Leeds at like 4 a.m. just to be safe. So not only are we driving half asleep, we know that we're heading into that band with these charts. And those kids in those assemblies were just blown away.
Oh, they loved it. I remember, like, we're doing Friday night at the Cadillac Club.
Yeah.
And there's a video. I had someone take a video of one of them, and you could see, it was the last tune we did of the set, and you could see these kids getting up out of their seats, and then they were like looking around, thinking, "Oh, should we be standing up or should we be sitting down?" You know. But they were really into it. They were really loving.
You can't not when there's a big band like roasting into your face in assembly.
That's the thing. That's the thing I remember about going back to the Glenn Miller thing when I first saw them. It was in a small theatre, and I think those are the best gigs with a big band in a small room. Because you get the volume and everything's just coming at you, and it's brilliant. The sound is incredible. You know,
big bands in the bar at the old music hall. They were good in there, weren't they?
Fantastic.
They sounded good.
I used to love it. In fact, I've got a video of my band doing that. I don't know if you must have been on it, Paul.
I had plaited hair then, Steve.
Yeah,
like
you
dirty plaits all hanging down and beads in them.
There was. I remember doing. It must have been second year, early into the second year, and we did a gig in the bar. It was just before Christmas, and I've got a video of that somewhere.
I don't want to see it.
It's all right, you know. It's not. It was before I'd started writing all the stupid stuff. You know, I was still using stock arrangements and like Take the A Train and Killer Joe and stuff like that. But it's like Rob Malarkey's on bass and Dan Snape's on piano, and it's good. You know, it's what Brian's on lead trumpet. It's great, you know. It's all right. It's not a bad start, you know. And then that was before it was the big band from Hell, and then it became the big band. I think it was that year, it was the jazz festival that year.
Yeah. I always think of the phrase like, now we're older. I always think of the phrase like, youth is wasted on the young, right? But it wasn't wasted on you. You didn't waste when you were at music college.
No, I loved it. I loved just playing and
didn't waste
writing.
any time.
No, I think that was the one time really at college when I was into it. I was constantly writing. I remember.
Yeah, you were in our house. It was scores.
It was scores
It was
everywhere.
amazing. I'd pick things up on the table. This. What?
But
I really did something crazy.
Going back to handwriting parts out, I remember staying up all night writing out a piano part for Sweet London Bridge because it was, I wanted it to look good, it was proper calligraphy and all that. And it took me 7 hours to write this bloody piano part.
I could never do it because I'm left-handed. And I always smudged every ink thing I ever wrote. And Ronnie Bottomley used to say to me, like, what? Don't hand me these scores in, like, looking like this with these. And I had to develop this really weird way of holding the pen, like, under the score, where my hand was nowhere near.
Yeah.
And that was the only way. And it used to take me so long to write a chart.
I remember those lessons. I remember the first lesson with Ronnie Bottomley, music copying lessons. I think we were the last year to ever have that.
Yeah.
But I remember him saying he'd give you a list. I think it was probably like a photocopy of this list of pens.
Yeah, that's right.
That you had to get. It was this calligraphy pen, this smaller one, and there's like a drawing pen. Then you had a marker, felt marker.
Leads to go and get them.
Jowett and Sowery.
As if he remembers.
Jowett and Sowery on the hedgerow.
Steve, man.
That's the one. And that was it. You had your pencil case and you had all in your straight edge and your Tip-X and all this sort of stuff.
Now you just press print, man.
Yeah. But actually what annoys me now is that people do just press print.
Yeah.
They don't have the knowledge of the before when you did have to handwrite it and how you used to have to set it out. 4 bars to a line is good. Doesn't matter if you can't, but 4 is good.
But I remember,
and page turns in the right place and all that
I remember
sort of
Ronnie
thing.
Bottomley on that first lesson saying, right, you all think you can do a treble clef, do you?
Yeah, that's not.
Let's have a look.
Draw
then.
me a treble clef.
Like, oh, God.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But it translates to the music, doesn't it? Because when you get a part that's higgledy-piggledy and doesn't look good, or there's too much information on it, or not enough information even, it affects the way it's played.
It's true. I mean, if you're in Ronnie Bottomley's band and you made a mistake, it wasn't because of the chart.
No.
It was because of you.
Yeah.
It's because you'd done something wrong, not because the chart was
His charts
difficult.
were so perfect.
Oh, they're incredible. It was the most beautiful calligraphy ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about not very nicely written charts, because you asked me about thinking about funny gig stories.
Yeah.
Right. So we can move on to this.
did.
This is not a gig story. This is a session story.
Yeah.
And you'll remember this because you were on these sessions, right? I got a call, this must have been 10, 15 years ago, maybe, to put together a big band for a recording session.
Does he now know what
Jim is now remembering. Right.
Oh, wow.
So it is basically, I get this call, can you put together a big band? There's this guy, he's a singer, he's written some songs, and he's arranged them for big band, and he wants to record them. And he's booked Parr Street Studios in Liverpool. Jim is now...
This is actually legendary, this session.
This is it.
Amongst musicians that were on it that day. Only they know.
Well, actually, it went slightly further than that, which I'll elaborate later on. But it was basically, so this thing was happening. It was booked like a few weeks in advance. Like, great, okay. So I email this singer. We have this sort of email thing. He's like, yeah, I've got these songs and I want to record them and it's blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like Nelson Riddle. I want to do like, he basically wants to be Frank Sinatra. So I'm like, great, okay. Can you send me the scores just so I can look through them and see if, I can get my head around them. So I get this email with these PDF scores and you've not seen anything like it. It's like, if you ever wanted to know what chaos looked like, right, It was these scores.
You could draw chaos.
If you could draw chaos, it was these pieces, right? So I'll try and explain what they looked like. It was basically, the only reason I could come up with, he must have played on a keyboard these things into Sibelius and hit quantize. And it had quantized everything a semiquaver early, right? And you had notes tied to other notes, tied to other notes, tied to other notes.
Weird counting.
It's an odd thing. Yeah. So you might, instead of having a dotted crotchet, you would have a semiquaver tied to a crotchet, tied to a semiquaver. But the first semiquaver was before the bar line, right? Okay. Everybody's parts for all 3 songs
were insane.
Looked like this, right? Well, no, you got the sanitized version, right?
No, wait a minute.
No, yeah, but yours were just non-existent.
The lead alto part had 175 bars rest and 1 note at the end.
At the end,
And I remember looking over at the second alto part,
and he was all over the place.
which just looked like just full of notes. I sat there for one of the charts, not playing it.
No. You sat there for one of the charts laughing. You were openly laughing. So, well, this is the thing. So I get these scores, and I emailed him back. I said, I can't put these in front of the band. They'd walk out. You know what I mean? And I booked a good band. You know, Dale Gibson on lead trumpet, Jim was on it. All these people was like, this is going to be ridiculous if they look at this. So I said, look, I can redo them for you if you want. You know, it'll cost you whatever it was I was charging at the time. And he's like, no, it's okay. I'll redo them. It's fine. So I'm like, okay. So then I get the second lot back. And they were marginally better. You know, it was still weird. They still had some odd things on. But I noticed everything where things were landing, for instance, on beat 1, they were now landing on beat 4. And I sort of emailed him saying, you realise things have shifted, the beats moved on these. And he emailed back saying, yeah, it's okay, it's how I write.
It's how I write.
It's how I write. So I'm like, okay. Then I sent him examples of my charts. I was like, look,
this is how I write.
This is like his drum parts were all over the place. I said, look, this is, you know, I think how the drum parts should look, and this is how blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah. He emailed back saying, yeah, I'm trying to be like, you know, I want to be like Nelson Riddle. I want it to sound like Nelson Riddle. And he sent me examples of Nelson Riddle's charts, and I'm looking at these going, yeah, these aren't what yours look like.
No, they're not them.
It's not going to happen. So anyway, I get these second lot of scores, and I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, I can't make head nor tail of these at all. So I emailed him and said, can you send me an audio version, an audio file of just like MIDI sounds of what your scores are? Yeah, no problem. So he sent me these audio files. I thought, right, I can get my head around these. Press play, and I've no idea what key we're in. I can't hear what key we're in at all. I can't hear where the beat is. I don't know where 1 is. Where's 1? I've no idea. So I'm like, okay, right, it's fine. We'll get through it. So like the day before the first session, so this is 3 sessions, 3 songs. Initially I thought, we can do all 3 songs in one. And then I got these scores. I'm like, okay. No, it's not going to happen. So we've got 3 sessions. So the day before the first session, I sent an email out to all the band saying, right.
Warning.
Yeah, warning. Just to let you know, this is possibly going to be a bit of hard work. Okay. So we get in there, they're set up. Parr Street Studios, Liverpool, it's a well-known studio, you know, it's big, they're doing everything there. And so the band's set out, the drums are there, all the mics are out and everything. This guy's there, and he's must be in his like early mid-20s or something, and he's in a suit. He's like this silver grey suit, pink shirt, tie, everything. So I'm like, okay, you know, he's a nice fella, he's all right, you know. Say hello to him, brilliant. So they put him in the vocal booth. They've set me up some cans. So I put these headphones on. They lasted about 6 seconds. I was like, I can't listen to this. The guy sounded like a cross between...
I can't listen.
He's like a cross between bad Sinatra and bad opera.
Yeah.
Right. He had the sort of crooner thing of Sinatra, but not quite nailing it. And he had this vibrato that was as wide. You could park a bike in it. It was that wide. It was mental. And then the charts were just, everyone had the charts up. The drum part was non-existent. So I count the band off this first tune, and it's chaos. Everyone's trying their best to play what's in front of them, but what's in front of them is not legible. And it's all like, I remember looking at the lead trombone part, and he'd be like loads of ledger lines for one note, and then the next note would be in the middle of the bass clef stave, and it was jumping all over the place.
It sounded like alien music. Like from another planet. Like music you've never heard in your entire life.
It was
no reference point to, like I have never heard anything like this.
And there was nothing to grab. There wasn't like a chorus that you could grab onto or anything. So, everyone's hands went up. Yeah,
like,
it was.
Steve, it's like, I remember the trombones, like Matt Ball was on it, and he was like, I'm going from super low note to super high note that's being held for like 18 bars. Just stuff on their instrument that they'd never had to perform ever before. And then the first part was like lower than the... it was just nuts.
It was mental.
You were amazing because you were like, okay, everyone. You were like so calm, so diplomatic. You know what I mean?
But this is it. It was like, okay, we need to sort this out. It was always like, let's start with the drums, because the drums, it was just a sea of slashes. He had no phrasing written at all. Bob Howard was on drums. So we'd play it through once. It would sound absolutely weird, chaotic. Nobody knew what was going on. And then the next 20 minutes would be, right, the phrasing at bar 6 is da-da-da-da, ba-ba, or whatever, so he'd get his pencil and he'd write it in. So like at bar 10, you've got this, and at bar 20 is this, and at bar 32, if you play this is trombone, so maybe bass drum, right, okay, and so we'd sort that out, and then we'd maybe play it again, and so the drums would now be with the brass. We'd go, okay, right, they're playing together, cool. Now, let's look at the rhythm section, and it'd be things like he'd written piano chords on the piano part, written chords, and he'd voiced the chord out, but his voicing bore no resemblance to whatever the chord symbol was he'd written, right? So that was the first thing. The guitar part had different chords to the piano part, and the bass part, which had no chords on it, it was just crotchets walking, none of the notes corresponded to either of the piano or the guitar, right? So the first thing that went was the bass part. That went out the window. He was just now reading off the guitar chart. It's like, right, so at least the guitar and the bass are together. Then, so the bass player, the guitarist and the piano player were now conferring, what chord have you got at bar 15? It's like, I've got this. And so they're working their thing out. It's like, okay, that's fine. And then, so we play it through again. Right, okay, so the drums are with the brass now. The rhythm section's playing the same thing. Okay, but it's still sounding weird. So now we've got the whole thing with voicings and parts being like from up there to down there.
I'm fine because I've got 174 bars left.
He's all right.
I'm just laughing at this point.
He's just sitting there. So then we're sorting stuff out and we go, okay, so maybe you put that down the octave, and then if you put that up the octave, and then, okay, so this is the chord. That note shouldn't be in the chord. If you play an F sharp there instead, right, okay, play it again, Okay, and it's slowly sort of coming together, starting to sound almost like music. Right? So we're getting there. And every time...
A big band from Venus.
Every time that we're doing a new thing that's getting better, I would turn to the singer and I would say, is this all right? Is this sounding all right? And he's like, yeah, it sounds great, Every single time. So I'm like, okay, as long as you're happy, that's fine. Let me just try and work out what the hell's going on. And so, like, we'd sort of do it for like an hour. We'd be working for an hour and 20 minutes. Okay, let's take a break. So we take like a 15-minute break, and everyone is outside going, what's going on?
Or in the room,
yeah,
with
in the
mixing
control room,
desk going like,
what's happening here?
Have you ever heard anything like this?
But we come in after the break, and we carry on sorting stuff out, and we get phrasing, and everyone's playing together, and it's starting to come together. But in such a weird way, because the music that we're playing doesn't sound like music. It just sounds It just sounds like some notes and some chords that 17 people are all playing together. Right. So it's just, and the weird thing is, I'm getting into it at this point. Right. So I'm standing.
The vision.
I'm standing at the front of this band, jumping up and down and getting into, and landing on beat 4. Everything's on beat 4. It's all about beat 4. What's this thing about 4? Everything's going 1, 2, good. It's like 4. It's all about 4. It's like,
And then he starts singing.
And this is the thing. So
that's where I lost it.
There's a playback. So everyone's in the control room. We haven't heard him because he's in this vocal booth, right? He's just like, he's over there. We're just the band. We go into the control room, playback, and you hear this voice on top. And everyone just loses it. No. Everyone's like, what are we We've got another 2 days of this. Right?
I was only booked for the first
Were you only on the first day?
So I just had 174 bars of rest, laughing. I did actually end up doubling the second outro.
Did you?
But I was just in hysterics. I was crying at one
were?
point
I do
with
remember.
my head down, and I couldn't look up because I was crying.
We were doing
laughter.
a take, and I just remember looking over at him, just laughing his head off. It's just the funniest thing ever. But everyone was like...
It was on YouTube for a while.
Well, this is the other thing.
And then it disappeared.
It did disappear, but that was... The thing was...
Do you have a copy, Steve?
No, and I wish I did.
You can go back on this thing called the Wayback Machine.
Okay, well, the name of the song, this is another brilliant thing.
We don't need to say.
No. This is the brilliant thing. I'm not going to say the name of the singer.
No.
But the name of the song, I remember this so clearly. It was called None Else Would Suit Us. None else. None else. I was like, and I questioned him about it.
Like, what does this
I was
mean
like, is this none else? Is that right? Yeah, none else. Okay.
All right.
That's fine. So this is the thing. So we've done these 3 sessions, and they've become, as Jim was saying, become legendary amongst the musicians. And I was on a gig. So this would have been like the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of a particular week. On the Saturday, I had a gig in Manchester doing the Rat Pack show, and Dean Masso's one of the saxophone players. He was on, and he'd recorded on his phone one of the playbacks, and he was going round the band room playing it to people, going, "Can you hear what key we're in? Can you hear where beat 1 is? Because I can't." It's just like incredible. And then maybe a couple of months later, I bump into the engineer who was on that.
He was also very diplomatic and very calm and very cool.
Brilliant. And he said, do you remember that big band thing we did? I was like, yeah. He goes, there's a video up on YouTube.
No.
And I'm like, and it wasn't a video of the band playing. No. It was a music video.
Surreal, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was all like sort of Art Deco looking with like hand-drawn
female figures sort of going in and out.
Yeah, silhouettes of people playing trumpets and all this sort of thing. I mean, it must have cost them a fortune. To be honest, the recording must have cost him a fortune because it was all like MU rates. He had to pay for Parr Street. He had to pay for the producer. Yeah. He was getting it mastered at Abbey Road. The producer said to me afterwards, he goes, I've got to go to Abbey Road to get this mastered. They're going to laugh at me.
Going down to Abbey Road.
So this video was on YouTube, and I remember looking at it, and it had like 10,000 likes or something. And he clearly manipulated the figures.
And 17 non-likes from the band.
And all the comments underneath were really disparaging. It was like, what is... Oh, and I remember in the description of it, you click on the description, and the opening sentence was something like, do you want to be part of a musical revolution?
Just playing music that isn't music.
Well, but we were all sort of, by the end of it, we were all going... Is this guy a genius? And we just haven't caught up with it.
Yeah.
Are we just not there yet?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Is this like a zapper, some new,
Yeah.
It was mad. So there was the YouTube video, and there was all 3 tunes were on SoundCloud at one point, and I should have downloaded them. I should have ripped them, and I never thought. And they disappeared.
Yeah.
They disappeared after about 5 or 6 months. They were gone. never to be seen
Back to
again.
the planet that they came from.
But going from like the wider community, musicians community, I get a call once from Steve Price, Stretch,
Yeah.
right? And it's like some afternoon. He's on his way to a gig. He's in a van.
He's a great piano player and MD.
Yeah, he's great. He used to MD Joe Longthorne.
Yeah.
It could have been a Joe Longthorne gig they were going to. And he phoned me up and he said, "What's this thing I heard about? You know, this big band thing, this studio thing." So I told him what I've just basically told you now. And he had me on speakerphone in the van, and you could hear the whole band killing themselves laughing. They couldn't believe it was real. You know, it was just the most incredible. Yeah. I've never been part of anything like it before or since. No, it was absolutely, just the situation was unbelievable. I'm sure I've still got the scores somewhere.
I talked to Matt Ball, who's a trombone player, who was on that session, and we talk about that a lot. And he still remembers his part. You know, I remember having this to play, and it bore no resemblance to anything any of the other trombone players were doing, and it was ridiculously hard. You know. It's just crazy.
It was like, jumps, leaps in intervals that are not possible. And holding
the Mozart. Maybe he was the Mozart writing
Hated all of you and wrote out a new.
I remember looking at one point for cameras because I thought that it was like you'd set us all up. As a Jeremy Beadle moment, where it had come out, ha ha ha, you've all been had. But it wasn't.
It wasn't, it was real. It was all real.
Right, we have this thing, Steve, where at a guest we do like 20 questions.
Well, Steve is our first guest.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You are the first one to experience.
It might be more than 20.
The quick fire round.
Quick fire. Oh, I'm not very good at quick fire.
Well.
Does it say the first thing that comes into your head?
Yeah, just you can think about it.
Okay.
If you want. Favourite trumpeter?
Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah. Favourite arranger?
That's a difficult one.
I know, but you have to answer.
Yeah, all right. Got to go
If you had to pick one.
Duke Ellington, he's the master.
Your motto?
Just do it.
Wicked. Your favourite baritone sax mouthpiece?
Oh, clearly the Corrie brothers. Yeah, man.
Your favourite bread?
Bread? Well, it's got to be brown. It's got to be seeded. Maybe a Hovis. Hovis seeded, yeah.
Your favourite place?
Place? Ooh. I like Chicago.
All right.
That's good, that.
Favourite drummer?
Buddy Rich.
Favourite cold food?
Cold food. Oh. Does that include chocolate?
Yeah.
I suppose it does, doesn't it?
It could be cold food.
Chocolate in the fridge or not fridge?
Oh, do you know what? I used to do Twix in the fridge.
Yes.
Because then you can take the top off really easily.
I'm with you on that, man.
But no, not now. Actually, Dairy Milk. It's, the original and still the best.
Favourite Beatles song?
Beatles. Oh, don't do this to me.
Yeah, I know. I have to.
You can't. Oh.
Just one that survived.
One that's... If I could only ever listen to one Beatles song... Please Please Me is good, man.
Yes.
It's a good one.
Your favourite singer?
Now, this could either go pop or jazz.
Let's do both.
Do both. Favourite jazz singer?
Favourite jazz singer? Probably Nat King Cole.
Cool, I love his diction.
Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
Favourite pop singer?
Pop. Paul McCartney.
Heinz baked beans or own brand?
Oh, Heinz. I can't own brand anything is just really. No. I remember having Co-op Rice Krispies once. They were not good.
No.
They
go soggy quick.
Yeah, it's not great.
Your favourite string arrangement that you've heard, like that you think, that's.
Well, it'd probably be anything by Klaus Ogerman. Klaus Ogerman's just the most incredible string writer I think ever. It's brilliant.
Wicked. Favourite TV programme? It's got to be The Voice, isn't it? Hang on.
I've never seen it. I don't know. I'll probably have to go with something stupid like the A-Team.
Yeah, the A-Team.
One of them.
Your favourite piano player?
I'm going to go Nat King Cole again.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because incredible technique.
Your proudest moment so far?
Ooh. Doing this podcast. With
Shut up, Steve. He's proud. We're sitting in the studio he built, and he says that this is his proudest moment. You're having a laugh.
I don't know. Do you know what? There's of all the things that I've done, they are, to me, just things that I've done, and they're all great. I've loved doing all of them. So, I don't know. The proudest moment, maybe having the studio might be a cool thing.
We're gonna get onto this in a minute, a little bit more. So.
The instrument you like the least?
Trumpet.
Shut
Bloody
up.
rubbish.
Trumpet. Not like
well,
glockenspiel or
to
something.
play. No, all instruments are great, I think. Even down to the stylophone, I think all instruments have got
I've got one of them,
something.
They're brilliant.
They've all got something to
Okay.
give.
Name someone in music you feel doesn't get enough credit for what they've achieved.
Oh.
And when you think, nobody knows about them, but they're like killer.
Well, there's quite a lot of music that I listen to that is sort of not underground, but very not mainstream. I like a lot of Northern Soul stuff. And I mean, now Northern Soul is quite a popular sort of thing. But when it came out, sort of in the 70s, there were all these records from the 60s that nobody knew about them. So anything, Dean Parrish, let's say Dean Parrish, because he was, we were talking about him earlier off mic, he's great. I think people should know I'm On My Way.
Okay.
That's a great song, and he's brilliant.
Man. All right. Your perfect evening.
Sitting with some brilliant music on, bottle of red wine, and a block of Galaxy chocolate.
I thought it would be, after a full day in the studio, make some tea, back in the studio for writing with massive scores.
I used to be like that. I'm not as much like that anymore.
Transcribing big band charts just for fun.
Just for fun.
So I can practice the sax solos.
I have done that before.
Favourite alcoholic beverage?
Gin and tonic.
Yes, man. Your favourite topping on toast?
On toast, cheese. However...
What about a sweet topping?
No, I'm not.
No jams?
No, I'm not a jam liker. I'm a cheese on toast, but it's got to be something like Lancashire cheese with Worcester sauce.
With a bit of...
Worcester sauce and some chili flakes on there, black pepper.
Okay. The most useful thing in this studio?
I don't know. They're all fairly useful. Depends what you want to do.
Is there a least useful thing?
Me.
I was going to say me. The most least thing in the studio is you, Paul, right now.
Dear.
Okay, last
I
one.
don't know,
If you could do one thing to change the world, what would it be?
Oh, man.
I don't talk heavy politics. I don't mean like just something.
Well,
big.
everyone just needs to... It's all about music. For me, everyone just needs to enjoy cool music.
Mandatory music.
Mandatory music, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, mandatory music lessons in schools that I think have gone now.
Yeah.
I know we are getting slightly political, but we're still a music thing. But when I was at school, I had a half-hour trumpet lesson every week.
We did.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
One-to-one thing doesn't. So I think,
Bring that back.
Bring music to kids.
Yeah, man, I agree.
That's the thing.
Can I add a couple of questions on?
Go on then.
If you could write an arrangement or a score for anyone, whether it's an artist or another arranger or someone, who would it be? That you've not done one for already?
I don't know. I mean, going back to the Paul McCartney thing, it would be cool to write, because he did an album a few years ago, didn't he, at Capitol, where it's all like old songs from his childhood, like all the it's like Fats Waller and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to do something like that.
You mean you heard it and you think you could have arranged something better?
No, but it'd just be great to do something for him, just because, I mean, I've been into Paul McCartney probably since I was about 3 years old. And still now, he's brilliant. You know, I love his songwriting, I love his singing. He was the first proper big gig I ever went to when I was about 15. It was in Liverpool, King's Dock.
What a set list that would
Oh, man, it was incredible because he sort of embraced the Beatle thing again because he'd left it all behind. He didn't really want to do much of that stuff for years. And at that time, he just brought all that Beatles stuff back. Plus, he had all his new songs. It was the Flowers in the Dirt album. And it was a brilliant band. He had like Hamish Stewart was in there from the Average White Band. Wix Wickens, who's still his MD, I think, now. McCartney is just great. Yeah, so McCartney is the answer to that.
Aside from music, how do you relax and chill out when you want to switch off from
He's shaking
writing?
his head. It doesn't ever happen, actually.
Silence.
Is there anything that you do? Silence.
Silence is, yeah. I remember Joel Pennell saying this to me. It's like, you constantly listen to music, which I used to do. It was all the time. And I got to a point, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, where in the car, I just switched the radio off and it was silence. And I was like, this is good. However, what happens then is the music in the head starts going round, which is cool because then you can work stuff out musically. Because it still is all about music for me. It's the only thing I'm good at. It's the only thing I can do. And it's what I am. So it's always there. So when there's silence, then I can listen to an album in my head. Do you know what I mean? If I want, or I can dissect stuff, or I can think, oh, if I did that, then maybe that would sound like this, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, silence is... I like silence.
I do. I always like the silence on the way home from a gig. In the car, like up the motorway. I just have nothing on and just chill out to my own brain.
No, it's good.
If you rearrange the words, the letters of silent, you also get listen.
Oh, I like that.
Which I like.
That's cool. I'm into that.
Yeah.
Because you do listen to what's in your head if there's silence.
Yeah.
It's a very guru thing to
Listen.
say. I like it.
So we need to talk about this studio. We're in the old school recording studio. It was an old school.
It was, yeah.
So this is a project that's taken many years. People can't see, but we're sat looking at the most amazing collection of keyboards, which we were talking about earlier, guitars, basses, drum kits, saxophones, brass instruments. Yeah. So when did this start?
Well, it was one of those things. We moved here, so the studio is it looks like a big church hall, type of a Sunday school hall, and the house where I live is at the back. So it's like you can just go through the doors and you're in the house. So about 6-7 years ago, my girlfriend and I were looking for a house, and I was looking for some studio space. I didn't know what I wanted. Maybe I could rent a warehouse or something. I don't know, rent somewhere. I couldn't find anywhere. We couldn't find a house that we were happy with. And we just sort of upped the money a little bit on Rightmove just to see what was out there. And this place came up. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting, That could be studio. It's got this hall on the front of the house, right? Brilliant.
And it was an old school?
Yeah, it used to be. It was built, let me get this right, I think the house was built in 1908 and the hall was built in 1911.
Wow.
And it's been all sorts of things. It's been a temperance hall. It was a dance school for years, for about 20 odd years, I think. And you bump into anyone round here, and you say where I live. Oh, yeah, I used to take my daughter there for dance lessons and all this sort of stuff. So for years it was a dance school. It was like a daycare creche sort of kids place for a while, and then it was empty for 8 years before we bought it. So we sort of came in and we were looking. It's like, this would be great, and it was just a drafty old hall, wooden floor. And it was funny because the guy selling it, he was like, so if you knock it down, you can build this and you can build that, and blah, blah, blah. And he'd marked it all out on the floor with masking tape and stuff. And I was like, no, we don't want to knock it down. Let's keep it as it is. Okay. So if you knock it down, you can all of this. Anyway, we ended up buying it. And I was like, this would be brilliant, it's perfect studio, you know. But I didn't have the money at the time. So it was like a question of saving up. And I had the voice gig, which is a good earner. It's like, that's my mortgage paying gig. So and another reason why it's brilliant is it's only half the year. So it leaves me the other half of the year to do whatever it is I want. And I don't have to think about, am I going to earn enough to pay the mortgage? You know, that's all taken care of. So I still had to save. And it got to a point where I was like, right, I've got the money in the bank. I can get this built. So we got an architect, we got a builder in and all this sort of thing. And they started, and this was 2019, sort of September-ish or something like that, 2019. So they sort of came in, all this, knocked it up, took all of, there was like cupboards on the walls that were built in, took all those, skip outside, get it all, blah, blah, blah. Got it all sorted out, and it gets to, what was it, February 2020.
February, March, yeah.
And then it all stopped because of the pandemic. And it was getting really close, you know, we were sort of laying the floor, everything was, and it just all stopped. So I'm like, okay, fair enough. And it was just like one guy ended up coming in on his own, and he's like trying to lay the floor on his own, and all this sort of thing. So it just went on and on and on and on. And in the end, it got finished in November, I think it was 2020. And the whole point of this room, I'd never wanted it to be a commercial studio. That wasn't the point of it. The point of it was a room where I can stick all my gear, because I've got a lot of it.
So you'd amassed a lot of this stuff before you...
Yeah, it used to be, in my old house, it used to all be in all the different rooms. I never had a spare room. Everything had like some like keyboards or something. The kitchen, you used to walk in the kitchen and there was 2 Hammond organs and a harmonium in the kitchen, you know what I mean? And there was like drum kit under the stairs and all this sort of stuff. So I had a lot of this gear. I had the mixing desk that I used. That was in what used to be my old bedroom, because I bought my old house off my mum and dad, and they sort of moved out. They moved like 100 yards down the road or something to a smaller place and left me on my own with all this gear. So he just took everything. So I needed somewhere to store all of that. But also, I mean, I've loved recording since I was a kid, you know, since I was like 8, 9 years old. I've always just loved recording stuff. So I've always done it. And it was just great for me to have a room where if I got asked to like put a horn section on something, I could do it. And I've got a nice room, or put some drums on something, and I could leave the drums out if I wanted to. Because before, if I recorded them in my house, you know, I'd have to set them up in the living room and record, and then have to put them all down, take them all back upstairs, and all this sort of thing.
Neighbours.
Yeah, all of this sort of stuff. So it was just like to have somewhere where I could do that and just leave stuff out if I needed to, and have the mics all out if I needed to. And then there was things like, well, if I wanted a string section, I can now bring them in. I don't have to hire anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
I've got the room. I can set my mics up, and I can, you know, I bought some chairs, all the music stands and everything, so I can bring a string section in. Or we could do the horns like we've done for The Voice of Starstruck that you've come down, Jim.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to record here.
And it's just not a commercial place. It's for me. It's like my practice room. It's like, well, it's my office, but it's a big room for an office, but
It's a killing office, mate.
it's basically what it is, you know.
Something you alluded to earlier, which was like about when you were doing the Blues Brothers and you were talking about the authenticity of the music. Like, when I've recorded here and you've put certain mics out and you've got this like collection of stuff to capture authenticity and capture what you want that sounds best for the music you're recording.
Well,
that's incredible.
Well, that's it. I mean, I've always, maybe not always, but I've got this love of things sounding. Actually, I could probably tell you when this happened. It was when I was still doing Blues Brothers, and there was a version of it in Holland that we did, and it was a Dutch band, Dutch cast, everything. And I went over there as MD to set it all up. So there's me, the director, and the choreographer, all went over there to set this show up. And it was like people who'd never done the show before, all these people I'd never met before. And the guy who was going to be MDing the show in the band, he was called Nico Branson, and he was a Hammond player. He wasn't a piano player, he was a Hammond player. That was his instrument. And he used to play with people like Jan Ackerman, from Focus and stuff. And he's a brilliant player. So he had this battered old transistor Hammond, like 70s thing, and a solid state Leslie, big Leslie. And all the band, they all sort of had that mentality. So the bass player hadn't changed his strings for 20 years. So it had that dead sound, I was like, this is good, And the drummer, the way he played and the sound of his kit, it just had this sound that our band never had. Our band was all, well, these are good instruments, let's play these. And it was all mic'd like this and blah, blah. And so listening to them, I remember them playing I think we were auditioning singers, we were auditioning backing singers, and the whole band were there, which is unusual. So they were playing for these singers. Just in a room, it wasn't mic'd up or anything, but the sound of this band was it sounded like the records. I'm like, what is that? What's making that happen? Yes, it was the players, but it was also the equipment that they were using. And that was when I started really getting into Hammond organ. So in breaks in rehearsal, I'd just go up to the organ and have a go. And Nico would show me certain things you could do with the drawbars and all this sort of thing. And I got really obsessed with Hammonds then. And that's when I bought my first Hammond. It was just on eBay, I think. Somebody just selling it wasn't a home organ, but it was close to being one. But it had the drawbars, I've still got it, it's over there. And then I bought another one, and then I bought a Leslie, and then I got another Leslie, and I drive up to Scotland to pick it up, and all this sort of stuff,
And then I had to move house.
Well, it was it. I've got to build a room and a hall. Let's put it all in. So it was from then I really started getting into the sound, the authentic sound of things. And I've always sort of liked the soul music and the 60s sound. And then I started looking into the recording side of things. I've got a brilliant book over there. It's called Recording the Beatles. And it's huge. It took two guys 10 years to write it. And it's basically everything about the equipment, the people, the rooms, the echo chambers, the microphones, everything about Abbey Road is in this book. Before you even get to the Beatles, there's half the book is all about the studio. When it was built, when it was bought, it was just a townhouse that got extended on, and all these sort of things. I just really got into it.
Yeah.
So all these things with mics.
You've just shown us for the first time your own echo room.
Yeah, the echo chamber.
You've got.
Well, that's
so that
what
was
I wanted.
Something specifically that you wanted when you built here.
Because this is the thing. When the Beatles recorded at Abbey Road in the 60s, they used Echo Chamber 2, and it had a certain sound. And that's what you did then. There weren't, digital reverbs didn't exist.
No.
The closest you got was a plate. So,
Do you have a plate reverb?
No, I was thinking about, I'd love to have one, but then it's where'd you put it? Because they're quite big.
Right.
I mean, it's my mate, Neil Innes at ATA Studios in Leeds. He's got a couple of plates, I think. Right. And that's a great studio. He's just redone it in the last year or so. He's got these plates. But the chamber was something that I thought, my thing is I like having things that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And, I can't think of any of the studios around here that's got a tiled echo chamber, And I researched into the best way of doing it. And it's not a big room, but when you put it up on the desk, it sounds great. And the great thing is, even though you can't adjust the length of it, it's just a room, I suppose you could dampen it by putting things in it and it wouldn't last as long. But it doesn't matter. You can put any tempo of song and put that reverb on it and it works. And it sounds great. And it's like, well, nobody else has got that sound in their recording. It's
Dwayne
my
Eddy told
studio.
me that on one of his early hits, for the sound of his guitar, outside the studio was an old water tank.
Oh, brilliant.
And they ran it they made a water tank reverb for his guitar, basically.
Well, that's brilliant, and that's what all you need is a speaker and a microphone.
I remember reading one about a very late Stones album. Charlie Watts just wasn't happy with the drum sound, and they tried positioning it all over the studio to the point where this engineer said to him, let's just try setting it up at the bottom of this stairwell.
Yeah, perfect.
In this studio. And the rest of the band went out for this break. He was like, come on, loaded the whole kit down to the bottom of this sort of 5-6 story stairwell, ran all the cables down, mic'd it up. And
There
he
you
was
go.
like, that was the sound of the drums on that album.
Well, that's just like what's it called? John Bonham on, is it When the Levee Breaks? It was recorded at Headley Grange, which is like a big stately home.
That's right.
And it's the same thing. It was recorded at the bottom of a stairwell.
That's right, in a like open.
Yeah, so you had that, and I think they had the microphone at the top
That's
of
right,
the stairs.
Hung 'em over the stairs.
And then Jimmy Page put the whole thing through, I think it was like a Binson Echo Rec or something, delay. So that's where you get,
Yeah.
you get that sort of sound of the slapback.
As if they just went to an old mansion, rocked up, set up in there, we're doing an album, hang them off the banisters, right? It's crazy,
I know,
isn't it?
it's mental.
And they get that sound.
Yeah.
And
It's just one of those brilliant things.
What's your favourite bit of gear in here? You were showing us something earlier,
Oh,
right?
the Mellotron that I was showing you. I love the Mellotron. There's so many things in here which are great.
So that
in their own-
Mellotron was made for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Streetly Electronics, who they made the original Mellotrons. So it's now John Bradley, who's the grandson, I think, of Les Bradley, who he founded Streetly Electronics in the 60s and made the original Mellotrons. So the story of the Mellotron is they ended up collapsing, and somebody bought the name. I think it was an American company. So they ended up using the name Mellotron. So then they reinvented, I think they were called Novatron for a bit in the 80s, early 80s, and then it just stopped. They just didn't make any more. But then they kept on repairing like the old Mellotrons. They were still there to repair the old ones. And so the company kept going, repairing these old things. And then at one point, it was John Bradley and a guy called Martin Smith. They were like, can we make new ones? Is there any way of making a new Mellotron?
band back together.
Yeah, it is just one of those. But like just making them more stable,
Yeah,
basically, because the old ones, the M400s, they're called the smaller ones. They just basically had it was like a frame, a tape frame that you stuck in the back of it, and you could have 3 sounds. And that was it. The bigger ones, the Mark IIs, you could have more. They had banks. They had these big drums, which is what mine has got. So they've taken elements of the old Mark IIs and the 400s. So it's the size of a 400, a little bit higher, I think. But they've got the drum of the Mark IIs, so you can have more than 3 sounds. You've got 8 banks of 3 sounds each. And you heard it when I changed the
Yeah.
this big drum sort of turning. So yeah, I loved the Mellotron, and I just thought, you know what? They're making new ones. I've saved up a bit. Let me treat myself. So
Have you still got your mellow phone?
I've still got the Mellophone. That's down
Is
there.
it?
Yeah, it's in that case
I
down
haven't
there.
seen that for like 25 years. I'll have a look at that later.
I bought that in Holland on a trip. It was the Breda Jazz Festival when I was at college. Went over there with Rick Taylor.
Rick Taylor
Was
trombone.
on. Yeah, it was one of those. It was a band that Mike Carton had set up at college. Mike Carton was a trombone teacher at college, and but he couldn't go on this particular trip, so he put Rick in as trombone player. But he wanted someone to lead the band, so he asked me to go over and play trumpet and lead the band. It was all trad, doing all trad stuff. But there was an instrument market that we went to on one day. We were there for 5 days or something, or a week. And there was an instrument market there, so that's where I bought the Mellophone. Again, nobody else had one. So I was like, I'm having one now. Oh, thank you.
When you playing it in our house, I was like, just listen to this. And I was like, I put my head right in front of the bell. I was like, wow, man.
It's a great sound. It's like a big flugelhorn.
It's mellow. It is mellow.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it was good.
What bit of advice for anyone listening that wants to get into or has an aspiration to write music in any shape or form, at any level, or even in particular thinking about TV work or film scores or just enjoy writing, because you can do that in so many different ways now, right? People in their home studios, they don't necessarily read music or anything like that, but creating music, and they've got an aspiration to get their music out to a bigger place or even develop a career into music. What one bit of advice would you give them from your experience of going through that process?
Well, what I've always done is just keep doing it, whatever it is. Just keep doing it and do it in as many situations as possible. with as many different people as possible. Because the thing is, it's not necessarily, half of it is doing it, whatever it is you're doing it well. And the other half is meeting other people who can then, they might know other people who can then, like what happened with me and The Voice, recommend you. But they will only recommend you if you're good at what you do. And the only way to be good at what you do is to just do it over and over and over and over again and keep doing it, keep listening to yourself. I'm always recording myself, practicing or whatever, and you play it back and you go, that sounds all right. However, that isn't good. Like your tuning's not very good on that note, or your vibrato doesn't sound very good. Okay, let's work on vibrato. And then you're just constantly evolving and trying to get better. I think the worst thing you can do is be hard on yourself. Because a lot of people a lot of singers go, I don't like listening to my own voice. I don't like it. And I'm like, well, why? Because everyone else has to listen to it. So why don't you listen to it? And if you listen to it and there are bits that you don't like, well, correct them. Just get better at what you do and, pinpoint what those things are that you don't like and make it so that it doesn't bother you anymore. Either you do like it or it just is part of it and you don't mind, But yeah, just keep doing it. And that's all I've ever done is just keep doing what I'm doing and do it as much as possible in as many situations as possible.
I've got a really favourite memory of you that I always think about of you when I think about you. And it was in our old house. And it's to do with some toast. Steve is the only human I've known who can chain toast. I have chain smoked at the same time that he was chain toasted. In the mornings, we'd get up, it would be functional harmony at 9 o'clock or something.
Functional harmony?
Yeah, right.
Bill Kinghorn?
Yeah. And we'd get up, we'd come downstairs. For some reason, we had a little telly down there in the kitchen.
Yeah.
We'd put on breakfast television, whether we cared what the hell was on it or not. And Steve could. I think the thing that enabled him as a chain toaster was our actual toaster, because it was old and knackered, but it was so powerful. You could put toast in, and if you had it on 5, it would be done in like 40 seconds, perfectly golden. And I can remember just having cups of tea and smoke in the morning, and you were just putting toast after toast after toast. 2 toasts would pop up, bosh, buttered, eaten. 2 would go straight in, pop up, bosh, buttered. 2 go down. And he could do a loaf, man. I've seen Steve do a loaf of toast. He may have been pretty hungry that day. It may have been one of those starving days as a student. I've never seen it. You probably don't do it anymore.
Not as much. I do have the odd toast, but I'm more of I have shredded wheat now. That's my thing. So
mine with you was we mentioned it earlier, the milk and bounty.
Oh,
bars.
bounty, yeah, blue bounties.
Do you still into bounty bars?
I do occasionally. I go through stages of
that's what you
favourite
were
chocolate
eating
bar.
when you were writing those Nijo big band arrangements.
Yeah, blue bounties.
Yeah,
blue bounties
fueled me.
Never the red one.
No, that's dark. I love dark chocolate digestives, but the dark chocolate bounties, no, not the red ones.
It doesn't work, does it?
No, it's got to be blue bounty. But it got me through college. Blue bounties and toast and milk. I don't know, maybe not as much milk, but
not as much milk.
But blue bounties and toast. It's good. I enjoyed that. Actually, it's my functional harmony.
Yeah,
I remember that.
But how fit were we? I was thinking as well.
Well, we used to walk in.
We used to walk to college
every
from
day.
our house in
about 20 minutes, wasn't it?
20-odd minute walk, right? But we were carrying like instrument. Like I had a baritone, a tenor, a bag with a flute and a clarinet in it, and a load of music and scores and that. And we were like, walking at full pelt, chatting, just loaded with stuff. I'd be dead if I tried to do that.
I couldn't. I think that's part of why my shoulder is so bad, and my neck is carrying a gig bag with trumpet and flugel and mutes.
Yeah, that's right.
Every single day, all day. Because you might drop it off at the instrument room when you get into college, but you'd have a band and you'd carry it up and downstairs and all that sort of thing. Actually, talking about bands, I remember Ellington band once. You forgot your music. You left it at home.
Don't. Do you know something, Steve? That the lesson I got meted out to me that day by Tony Faulkner, I learned from that, and I never did it again.
No.
Never
Well, you wouldn't.
Because
again.
the casualness of me saying, "Hey Tony, I forgot the charts. Have you got any spare ones here with you?" He went, "No, they are the charts." I was like, "Oh," and he went, "So you've left them at home?" "Yes." "Well, you're going to go home and get them, and everyone here is going to sit here and wait for you to get back."
And we did. We didn't play a note.
The face of everyone, the face on everyone when I got back in there. Right, and I'll tell you, from that minute on, it changed my whole life about your charts, and like never leaving them anywhere, never.
No.
Literally, I learned that day so badly, and I remember coming in the room. "Sorry, guys." It took me 45 minutes to like run home and run back. Everyone was like, "We hate you, boy." It's nearly 5 o'clock, mate, and we haven't started.
Oh no! I remember that in A8 downstairs in A8.
I did it. But you do learn from them things. I was meticulously ADHD about my charts forever after that.
Well, you got to be. It's like one of those. Should I take them home? I might forget. I don't know.
I might do a poll.
Will I do a Paul Corrie or will I be successful?
Oh man, charts, lots of them.
Tell us quickly in 5 minutes what you're doing with your new label.
Oh, the label. That's a really interesting thing for me because
It's called
Sterapar Records. And I had the name. The name came to me years ago when I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be a cool thing to have your own record label? Just thinking
Death Row Records.
It's just one of those things. Wouldn't it be cool if I had my own record label? What would it be called? Oh, Sterapar. And it's basically just the first few letters of my name, Stephen Robert Parry. So I just take those and there you go. Done. So I had that banked and I did myself a logo and everything when I was bored. Just sit on my laptop. Oh, that would be a cool thing to do. So I had that for ages. And then when I was in here, when I got the studio sorted, I was like trying to think of things to do. And I got back into songwriting, which is something I hadn't done probably since I was a teenager, because I sort of realised I wasn't very good at it. I was like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. But I always kept up the composition thing, so I could always write music, but it was always the lyrics which stumped me that I was never happy with. And then I started doing another project and listening to lyrics more closely. I was like, well, I can do that. I'm all right. That's all right. And listening to I Love Northern Soul. I was like, well, that's a style of writing that I think I can do. So I started writing again. I was like, well, this is cool. This is working. Who can I get to sing? And I've got a mate over the water called Joe Spear, who I did Blues Brothers with years ago. He's a great singer. So these songs, I've got a couple of songs that suit him. So I sort of recorded them here. And then I got Doreen Edwards. Do you know Doreen Edwards? She's from Manchester.
Yeah,
She's sung with my band.
Yeah.
Sung with a big band.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
So I've got her over to sing a couple of things. I was like, well, that's cool. I've got these songs now. And I did a couple of instrumentals. And that's all right. And I played them to somebody who was involved in a small label. And he said, oh, yeah, we could maybe put these out. I'll talk to the managing director and stuff like that. So I sent him the songs, and this guy got back and said, yeah, I really like the songs, but I think we need like younger voices on them. And I was like, well, the whole point of me doing these songs is I wanted these people to sing on them. No, you're not having these songs. And I thought, well, I could just put them out myself.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where that came from. So I thought, oh, I'll do this. And then another mate of mine came to me with there's a mutual friend called Edgar Jones, who's like a Liverpool musician. He's been around for years. He's a good musician. He used to play bass for Paul Weller. He's like supported Oasis, all these sort of things. And my mate James said, how about recording Edgar's next record at yours? I was like, well, that'll be cool. I can put it out on my label and it could be the first release. At least then I've got a name who's sort of successful in a bit of a cult way. Yeah. But he's got followers, like people like Daniel Radcliffe like his music, and Johnny Marr, Noel Gallagher, what's his name, who did Sherlock and he did The Office. Who's that guy? Martin Freeman. Yeah. He likes Edgar's music, all this sort of stuff. So at least there's some sort of audience then. So that's going to be, we finished the album a couple of months ago. It's just been mastered now. We've got a single and an album. Single's getting released middle of January, I think, and the album will be middle of February. So that's all sort of soul-based music, and it's great. I mean, he's very individual, Edgar. He's got an individual sounding voice and way of writing, but the whole thing, he loves 60s stuff. And he's a DJ as well. All his stuff is like sort of 60s soul and rare groove and sort of poppy stuff, like the weirder poppy stuff. Cool. So so that's that. So I've got Edgar's stuff.
Are you up for all different things coming onto that label?
Yeah, mainly soul and jazz is what I'm looking at. But it could be anything really, anything that I like. I want to release, and it's going to be mainly my stuff. It's just the fact that Edgar's a friend and I like what he does and I want him to have more, I want him to get another record out. And I think this is, he's not paying me to have studio time. So the three of us, me, Edgar and James, are splitting everything three ways. Yeah. So me and James are putting the money in and it's like my studio. James is doing all the promo and the marketing. And then Edgar's bringing Edgar and the songs and all this sort of thing. So that's that, but the rest of it will sort of mainly be my stuff. I've got the Northern Soul stuff that I've said, and I've done some jazz recordings as well. Like a similar thing to recording the big band on my own, but just with a 7-piece, if you like. So and the way I set it out, I set all the mics out and had them all open all the time. So you record the drums and all the horn mics and the piano mics open. You record the piano, all the drum mics open. So it's as if it's a band in a room, and I've tried to balance it that way, rather than if you just do everything individually, it can sound a little bit stifled, and it's not like a real band. You don't get the sound of the room properly. Whereas this is as if I set everyone out in the room, all the mics out in the room where they would be if it was real people. Yeah. And then just recorded stuff.
Brilliant! I can't wait to hear what comes out of it.
Yeah. So that's quite cool. It's quite exciting to do. Then you've got all the other side of it. It's all like the distribution and getting someone to distribute it and setting all that side up and all the registering of all the songs. That's like a learning curve. Yeah, but it's good. I'm enjoying it. It's a nice thing. Getting stuff on Bandcamp, which I was mentioning before. I really like Bandcamp. It's just one of those platforms. I think it's just a nice thing. Yeah, right. It's like human. Good. Yeah. Not like Spotify. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Steve, thanks for having us at your amazing place.
No, thanks for coming. It's good to see you both.
On location.
Yeah. This podcast will sound loads better than the others because Steve set all the mics up. Got the mixer out.
Sounds really pro this week.
Oh, wow, there's no So thank you so much for helping us set all this up.
No, not a problem.
And inviting us over to this place, and just great hearing your story and sharing this time with you. It's been amazing.
Thanks for coming. It's great to see you both again, especially Paul. I haven't seen you for God knows how long. I saw Jim about 3 months ago, but I've not seen you for about 4 years or something.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it? It's years, man.
Amazing. Thanks for coming out.
Nice one, Steve.
Wicked.